two, one, action.
Good evening. Today is Wednesday, November 29th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. The board has just returned from first executive session, and then we went public and we did a tour of the Furnace Woods Elementary School. And now we're ready for our main portion of our meeting. Let's please stand for the pledge.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Welcome to the agenda.
I need to pull something.
No, this is regular agenda. Can I have a second? Second. All in favor? All right. And before we get started, we have some wonderful recognition this evening, and I will let Mr. Trombley do the introductions.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and pleasure to recognize two student and a student organization this evening. First, we will recognize Mr. George Wright for his recognition of National Merit Scholarship as a semifinalist. Just to give a little background on the National Merit Semifinalist Program, this relates to the College Board PSAT scores and rankings. And just so everybody knows that less than the top 1% of PSAT scores and test takers in the nation earn this designation. So we're very proud of George. We're going to have him come up and talk about his journey. He will qualify for the merit as a merit scholarship finalist. So that comes out later on this year, unless he has something new to tell us. But I'd like to call George up at this time to be recognized and honored.
Thank you so much. I would just like to thank Mr. Tillo extremely. He was my math teacher, and when I was, still a junior, and we were like PSATs were coming up, he was really the one that said, like, God, make sure that you're studying for this. And if you don't do that well, no big deal. But if you do really, really well, that could mean big things. And he talked about his son became a national merit finalist, and how he got to have free ride at the University of Miami. And because of that, Mr. Tillo decided to buy his son a car. And so his big thing was that maybe if you become a national merit finalist, then maybe your parents will get you a car. So I would just like to thank him, and also all the teachers at Hendrick Hudson High School. They were very supportive. And I also want to thank Mrs. May, because she really also helped carry people in, and she really drills into grammar rules. A lot of the time, just things like to come naturally, or you sort of sound it out. She really showed the structure in the systems, and so I'm really grateful for her as well. Thank you so much.
We're just going to be coming back up here as part of our student government organization, which we want to take a moment to recognize as well. George is joined by his fellow student government representatives. I had the honor to sit in a meeting at their student government representation meeting with Ms. Scollins earlier in the year. The dialogue, the discussion, the discourse, and the debate were all focused on a collaborative environment between the administration, between the teachers and the students on how they could plan for an upcoming event, how we might be able to improve classroom interactions, how we might be able to improve overall school function. So we're very honored to be joined by a number of members of the student government, but we'll have their advisors, Dina Bertoni, excuse me, and Nicole Rosulio, correct? Did I say it right? Rosulio, I'm sorry. Can I still claim you guys status? Is that so would you please come introduce the organization and introduce the individuals? So we're happy to have you here.
All right, so we brought with us today our officers. Before we introduce them, I just want to say thank you for having us. Nicole and I took this on kind of just on a whim, and we got thrown into it. We are learning as we were going, but these five have taught us everything we need to know, and they barely need us. We send the emails, they tell us what to do. So they have been extremely helpful in this learning process. George, I think, is going to speak on some stuff that we've been trying to do, but our goal, especially in the next couple of years, is just to kind of get some new things off the ground. On December 22nd, we're gonna have a winter pep rally, which will be new at the high school. We're gonna have a staff student basketball game, so if anybody wants to, show off the skills, please join the staff team. And we got a lot of new stuff going on. So George, if you wanna come up, you wanna introduce everybody as it's your cabinet, go right ahead.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me. First of all, I want to put my appreciation to my co-advisor, Mr. Spoon, Ms. Bertolini, for being so supportive and ensuring the growth success of student government. At the beginning of the year, we didn't have a co-advisor, but they quickly filled the role and have been enthusiastic around direction and guidance in student government. I'd also like to thank Mrs. Lupien for giving great advice that was always well written and balanced. She's an infinite source of wisdom, and I know who to go to and have a dilemma. Finally, the cabinet of student government, which includes their press secretary, Carly Adiento, Treasurer Ember Bates, and General Secretary Alexander Wong, who all work really hard to make sure that student government runs smoothly and is effective. I'm extremely fortunate to work with such great people. As for the Vice President, Catherine Wright, even though we've had our ups and downs, we've maintained a working relationship for a wonderful 16 years. Her common sense and practicality is going to be an invaluable asset. I can't think of someone who I'm more proud to serve with. I know that next year I will student government in great hands. This year, there's been a noticeably improved positive environment in Dakota High School. I heard this principal scholar who has been greatly receptive of any student-led initiatives. She always makes herself very available and has really open lines of communication. There are some events she doesn't think will work out. She'll bring up her concerns and make it clear how feasible something really is. Conversely, she also passionately supports the ideas we brought up that can work and helps us make it a reality. Here are the prior times with administration where maybe was often an answer. No one knew really meant no or yes, whether to invest more time and resources to a project. That is no longer a problem. So Principal Scoggins has been an effortless transition becoming Henry Sailor, and we are so lucky to have her. An important thing to mention is that the student government does not have any actual authority, and the title of president or vice president only bears as much respect as the person who has it. Anything that we do is because of the good graces and voluntary contributions of others. We coordinate our efforts with a myriad of people, clubs, sports, teams, teachers, administration, parents, and the wider community. We really appreciate everyone for making student government's fall pep rally and the Holland High School a success, and we're excited for the future. We're planning to have more pep rallies during the season, as Mrs. Bertolini talked about, to make sure that all the athletes at Henry Custom High School are recognized, not just all ones. And we want to run a Friday date night during the holiday season where kids can leave off parents can leave their kids at the high school and we have a couple hours from Christmas shopping. Other than that, we want to update the club catalog for Henry Custom High School. Currently, it's a little bit outdated. It still says that Mr. Mackin is the principal of Henry Custom High School. And other inaccuracies, but we want to update and revamp it. So, and so much more. We hope to continue bridging the gap between the high school and our community. We're looking forward to the work you've done. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the update on the student government programs. And George, you mentioned something that I think speaks to what I witnessed during your meeting with Principal Scoggins. You mentioned that there is no true authority to the student government. So each of you is doing this out of service and getting back to your school and the community. I want to commend everybody who's here, your advisors for supporting you, and also all members of the student government. So thank you for what you're bringing to our, not only the high school, but the larger education community. So thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, so the next portion of our meeting is the audience comment. Yep, thank you so much. You guys are free to go.
Enjoy an evening of studying.
Yes.
Good, good homework.
Yes. Have a good night. All right, the next section of our meeting is audience comments for both agenda and non-agenda items. Carmen, would you mind calling up our first speaker? The first speaker is Penny Hines.
Hello, my name is Penny Hine and I am a community member and a teacher here. I've been teaching in the Henry Hudson School District for 30 years and I've been teaching for 38. In fact, I think I've taught 1/3 of the people who work in the Hendrick Hudson School District. And it's an amazing place to work. I've enjoyed my 30 years here and hopefully I have another 30 in me because I don't plan on leaving shortly. I want to thank you for Monday and I want to thank you for today. I appreciate it being part of it and being able to see and listen to everything that's going on. And I just want to urge you to really think. I listened to everything today, and as a community member, the amount of money it would take to make this building accessible for 3 complete grades. It works beautifully for 2, but we are in every room. Adding a 3rd grade, I'm not so sure would fit. And I just want to make sure before everything gets moved around that we can fit in whatever configuration is chosen. Frankie Lindsay, which is the largest and would have more space if opened up from where the tech department is and others to even add more pre-K classrooms because you already have the grades there that are there. And that to me is another option to do that. And I will teach in any building you send me, just put the kids in front of me and that's my love. And I will continue to do that. But I just want to urge you to really look and really think about the amount of money and the amount of changes in each of the buildings that would have to happen in order to house whatever group you put there. And that you don't do it, you make a decision, but you don't move for the September of 24. You really take the time to outline it, make sure the buildings work, and really think it through and move in either September of 25 or September of 26, and make sure the timeline works for the buildings and that construction and changes can be made for whatever decision you make. Hendrick Hudson is an amazing place. I raised my family here. My children graduated from Hendrick Hudson High School. Like I said, I've been here 30 years. I can't imagine going anyplace else or moving. So I just want to leave that for you to think about before you make any drastic changes. Think about what is here and can we make things work without making all of those district changes. I want to thank you again for Monday and I want to thank you again for today. It was very eye-opening to listen to even the fact that you need a specific size classroom for kindergarten. I didn't know that until today. So thank you very much and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charles Palvini.
I am Charles Bellamy, 45 years in the town of Cortland, pay taxes every single year. I'm new to this, so excuse me if I step out of bounds here, I don't mean to. I know you heard enough complaints about instituting the Princeton plan. At my own table, we had pros and cons. Some people said, yeah, it's a good idea. Some people said, no, it doesn't look like a good idea. I can tell you that after the implementation of the program, I have 3 grandchildren in school. I can tell you the disadvantages of it. We get up in the morning, we've got to put 3 different children on 3 different buses to go to 3 different parts of town. And quite frankly, I don't know that any of them are discernibly smarter than they were before the implementation of the Princeton plan. So I say there must have been another reason for it. Perhaps it was economically more responsible. And the board has a twofold responsibility, making sure our children is properly educated. And number 2, that it's palatable to the taxpayer. On the first part, no complaints. I think we've got a great system. I think we've got great teachers. I think our children are very well educated. On the second part, I'm wondering if the Princeton plan economically worked out for the taxpayer. I understand it did not, but I had nowhere to go to check that data. I attended Monday's meeting and I see that there are options on the table. I guess you got enough complaints about the Princeton plan to say maybe we ought to change it. And my question is, with all of the explanations I heard, I didn't see any budgets. So as the taxpayer, I said, what's it going to cost me to implement either one of these 2 alternatives that you're looking at? And, you know, Milton Friedman was a great American economist, once said, don't judge a plan by its intentions, judge it by its results. So we can only do that if we know what the intentions are. And again, is there someplace I can go to look at budgets for the cost of implementing each one of these plans? And then we can refer back to it in a year from now and say, hey, it worked or it didn't work. That's not a condemnation of the board. That's just to say we make decisions as best we can. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And if they don't, we backtrack and we redo them. But financially, to the taxpayers, and particularly those that don't have children in the school system, what's it gonna cost? Is there someplace I can go to look at a budget for either plan?
So originally, when Princeton plan was voted on years ago, when it was studied and they went through the process of the implementation or the planning to implement, the focus was on money, as you mentioned. And after the implementation last year, the board and the administration realized that while the goal was reduce the number of teachers that we need because of the organization, there are other costs that weren't included in transportation and all of that. So exactly what you're talking about. And we discovered that there really truly wasn't any savings. And the board, this board and last year's board said, well, from now on, we need to make decisions that are best for the children that we can afford to make. So I think tonight we plan to touch a little bit on how these different models could impact the budget. However, I can say with fair certainty that there shouldn't be, besides any structural changes that the board might decide to do from now until forever in terms of the physical buildings, the actual plans, there's no real drastic difference in the number of staffing. There's no real drastic difference in the transportation costs.
Based on what?
I'm sorry?
Based on what? You have a budget?
No, so if you look at our plans, you can see the total number of teachers, FTEs. You can see that we're still employing the same custodians and we're still employing the same bus routes. So there really shouldn't be too much variance, but we do plan to touch on that this evening. So each plan is not spec'd out, it's not budgeted out fully. But we do know that if we were to shift from this plan to other plans, that there would be small changes. We'd save a little here, but you add a little here in terms of the different line items.
So that begs the question, and why do it?
Why do what? I'm sorry.
Why change the current plan?
From the 2-year grade banding model, we're trying to solve problems that have come up over the last year with our community. So we have complaints from all different areas, and then we have people and families that are super happy. So we're trying to find a way to bring the best of both worlds together within reason without changing our expenses.
Okay, but no budgets.
So we wanted to make sure that rather than come with dollar figures to show people this plan costs this amount of dollars, this plan costs this amount of dollars. When we implement the plan due to unforeseen changes, we didn't want to come back to the public and say we were off by $50,000, we were off by $60,000. We wanted to look at major cost drivers such as staffing, such as transportation, such as construction costs, such as are there any contractual items we may need to look at? And rather than put specific dollar amounts to make sure that we were not inaccurate, we wanted to say, if you looked at this plan, for instance, from the current plan, would there be an increase in transportation costs? And talk in those metrics rather than specific dollars. Because when you take a look at the costs associated with this, there are larger costs that may drive movement away from the current plan, such as moving costs that could wipe out any cost savings to look at. Also, we're going to talk about the financial forecast as well, too, with items that the district must have their eye on beyond the move that are going to have more of a budgetary impact.
Okay. In essence, it means we give as taxpayers, and I speak as a taxpayer, we give you a blank check and hope it works out.
No, sir.
No?
No, sir. We still have a budget that we propose, and we have to remain within certain parameters there.
Where do we get a hold of that budget?
We're entering the budget season, so
It's not
we're,
planned yet.
Not that.
Every year it begins around this time of year, we start building the budget, and then come about February, we start presenting different pieces of the budget each board meeting. And this year, we're actually going to be, I think tonight we're approving it. We have a budget calendar, so you can tune in to all the budget presentations, and we even have a line by line. This has never been done before here. A line by line meeting on a Saturday where you can actually see where every single one of your dollars is going.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else sign up? All right, so, does anyone have anything to pull from the consent agenda? Jeremy, I know you were,
Yeah, 6-4, I need to pull.
okay, 6.4, anything else we need to pull from the consent agenda? Just 6.4?
No.
No, these are already separate.
Oh, it's already.
Yeah,
Just a donation.
yeah, they're separate. All right, so we're pulling 6.4. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda less 6.4?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor? All right, we're pulling 6.4, and I believe that's just for the personal conflict, for Jeremy, correct?
Yep.
All right, so Jeremy will be abstaining, Carmen, from the vote on 6.4. Can I have a motion to approve fiscal contract?
Motion.
Second, all in favor? Right. And then we have, some donations this evening, and I know that Tamika was helpful with some of these donations, so she's going to abstain from, let's see, what's the donation for that's benefit? Okay, cool, so we'll do that one first. I don't think it matters, right? The Hendrick Hudson School District has received 50 chairs at an estimated value of $3,000 from the Lynette Bethea of Essence Ventures. And can I have a motion to approve this donation?
Motion to approve.
Second, all in favor? Okay, all right, now I'll read the other two because Nika can vote on these ones, so I'm gonna read them both and then we'll vote on both of them. The Hendrick Hudson Community Education Foundation has made a donation of $699.96 to fund the purchase of Italian readers, a bookshelf, and reader response journals to create a library in a classroom at the Hendrick Hudson High School. And then we have the Hendrick Hudson School District Physical Education Department has received a donation of $3,000 for the Unified Tennis Program. Wow, these are big donations tonight. Can I have a motion to approve both of these donations? Motion. Have a second? All in favor? That leads us to our presentation and discussion for this evening. Which do you want to move policy yet? Do you guys want to do that? Do I move policy?
We can.
Can I make a motion to move the number 10 on our agenda, policy readings, ahead of presentations and discussion?
Motion.
Second, all in favor? Okay, so we're gonna take care of our policy readings and get those out of the way. Our first policy is a second reading of policy 9130, fraternization between school employees and students. And I will turn it over to Erica, our policy reading lead.
Policy 9130 is fraternization between school employees and students. Intent of this policy, the relationship between the school employee, contractors, agencies, or independent contractors, and the student should be one of professional cooperation and respect.
Yeah, second. All in favor? All in favor. Okay. So this is just a second reading. Do you want to give any recap with any changes? I don't have it right now.
I don't believe we made.
No. Does anybody have any questions on this policy? Is the board, everyone's comfortable and good with this one? Okay. So this is our second reading, which means that we can vote on it this evening. Right? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve policy 9130. Second. All in favor? Okay. Our next policy is a revision to this. 4421. 4421. What is it? A revision? Second revision?
So we have already, this is like, we revised this one earlier in the year.
Okay.
And then we got some direction to make a change, so we are revising it a second time. Okay. This is the second reading of that revision.
Okay, so we can vote on
We can vote on this. Policy 4421, homebound instruction.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second. All in favor? Okay. All right, so this policy we've now read a couple of times.
We just added disciplinary issues, okay, to the first sentence, and everything else is the same.
Does anybody have any questions on this policy?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 4421.
I'll second it. All in favor? All right. Whoa. 4221.3. The independent educational evaluation.
Yes. And the regulations,
This is also a revised second reading.
yes,
Okay.
Policy 4321.3, independent educational evaluations. The Board of Education recognizes the
Motion
regulation.
to waive the reading.
Second, all in favor? Why don't I?
This was about fees, right?
What?
This was about fees.
Yeah, this is about the aligning the fees.
Okay. That's right. Okay.
We updated it we updated the verbiage, the wording, based on suggestions of our attorney and NICED. And then we're attaching Lisa, you're better at it.
Yeah,
It's like an estimated, the regulations are like an estimate of what the cost would be. We updated the cost. Okay.
And the idea is we would put a new table up every year for revisions, is that?
We have to put a new table up each year.
But that's under,
That's under regulation, not
so we
policy.
don't have to approve it as a policy.
Correct. We just have to approve the rates.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve policy 4321.3.
Second.
All in favor?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 43213.R. We have to approve the regulation.
Oh, second. All in favor? That's it?
Good work, everybody.
All right. So now we're going, we don't technically have a presentation. So the superintendent's report is next.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. To start the superintendent's report, I wanted to just focus this evening on some of the questions raised at Monday's public forum to make sure that we were able to report out as quickly as possible to those community members who came and asked some questions. So we've spent the time over the past 2 days collating them, summarizing them, and trying to answer them the best we can in the quickest way possible. The question across a number of different speakers was raised. What are we looking to achieve in any decision? In Dr. Laurel's opening statement, which will be read into the record, will further codify this, but just in general terms, we're looking to achieve the best educational experiences for all students in a cost-effective manner for our taxpayers. We've looked through these plans at the impact on students and what that will be on the educational environment. We are taking seriously, and the board has studied at length, early childhood considerations, the impact of the educational setting in diverse and equitable environments. We've looked at the use of multiple measures of data to make decisions focused on student outcomes with the best outcomes for students at the heart. The Board of Education has prioritized many of their discussions on which plan is the preferred plan, centered around the expansion of universal pre-kindergarten programs, looking to limit transitions for our students, the cost associated with any of these plans, and creating a supported and diverse learning experience, and listening to stakeholder input. There are a number of questions talking about schools with more than 18 sections and special areas. The administrative team worked with the board today and looked at the plans B and G and what those special areas would look like, and came to the determination in general terms that specials would fit. They actually made mock schedules based upon the two different plans, and looking at those specials that occur once a cycle and those specials that occur twice a cycle. We also looked at, there was a question urging by one community member who participated in the discussion on how we use data to make informed decisions and focus on student outcomes. And it was requested that the board be presented with some of the perception data that was shared at that based by building, and we did share that out with the board. It was brought up that currently transportation is still an issue, and the response that we have is we will always be looking to work on improving our systems and our output. So we will look to have mock runs drafted once a plan has been decided, and we will continue to try to improve upon this year's approach. We look for feedback to us if you have any of that. questions were brought up, how much are we looking to spend on these plans? And how much time are we looking to spend looking at the plans? And the response to that is that the board anticipates to make a decision at its December 6th Board of Education meeting. The question was brought up, how are we planning on bringing more families into the district with space? And a few years ago, the district engaged in a 10-year enrollment projection. Many of the plans look to repurpose any space, allowing flexibility should enrollment rates rise, if that to a level that would require us to use additional classroom space. And we are looking at other options such as repurposing. Are there external projects we can engage in, such as construction within budget, and also the possible use of exterior modulars within certain parameters. There's a question posed to the board that the ELA pilot, what are the ELA pilot plans? The teachers are moved for next year. And we anticipate continuing to move forward on implementing our new ELA program in order to benefit our students and honor the work done by our educators who are engaged in the pilot this year. Paper copies of all the survey. There was a question, what is going to be done with the copies of the survey? And we did provide all paper copies of the survey to the board for those results for their review. There was a question about what a modular space would look like. Are there any districts that currently have that? We can share, if the board chooses to in its discussion, we can also put up on the website. We have a link to a sample of what those modular would look like in the floor plans, but we do know that there are modulars in place at Pauling, Millbrook, Montgomery, Monroe, West Point currently from one particular company that we looked at. And that, other than at this point in time, doing what my wife says and telling the children to go to bed, that is the superintendent's report.
Excellent, thank you. All right, do you want to, as we get into the new business elementary school restructuring conversation, did you want to read Dr. Laura's statement to begin?
Yes, so we will continue over the past number of board, whether work sessions or public meetings, the board has been engaged in a prioritization effort to identify what characteristics of the various plans that remain have a priority in terms of decision making. So when we talk about things such as transitions, when we talk about things such as having students the opportunity to engage in diverse learning experiences, expanding UPK, those types of questions that you've drilled down on over the past couple of board meetings have really provided the impetus to remove certain plans that do not meet that criteria. We do not have any more of those focus questions tonight for you. We heard a lot of questions from our community. There was a lot of questions generated over the past couple of days that we thought could guide our discussion tonight. We have had our assistant to the superintendent, Dr. Dennis Lauro, who has spearheaded a number of these efforts along with our cabinet. He's been introducing the conversation with his thoughts because he's joined you since some of the sentient conversations have begun looking at the various plans. So we've deferred to him to introduce the conversation, and he has provided context that he hopes will guide your discussion tonight to help further help you decide on a plan, but also illuminate the public on your thinking in terms of making that decision. So I will read Dr. Lauro's statement into the record. It's titled Reconfiguration of Hendrick-Hudson Elementary Schools. And Dr. Lauro says, quote, "There is an opportunity that comes along with any reconfiguration plan adopted by the Board of Education on December 6, 2023. For the past several months, there has been much discussion about the further development of an appropriate expansion of our pre-K program to allow for all of our Hendrick-Hudson students who are eligible to have a seat in the program. It is the goal of the Board of Education to expand this program, and I want to remind you that the pre-K through 2 continuum is an important one to further develop. As was stated by our consultants in this area, giving these students appropriate interaction and activities that support human growth and development concepts for these students who are experiencing school for the first time, and allowing them to continue in a well-defined and appropriately developed program consistent with educational and philosophical knowledge will better prepare them for our upper elementary grades 3 through 5 and beyond. Let me also remind you that early childhood education is a branch of educational theory that relates to the teaching of children from birth up to age 8. In our discussions, we have focused mainly on pre-K to 2 students and its structure. In all plans under consideration at this time, except in the current model, we are keeping grades 3 to 5 together in one school. Looking back over these discussions and listening to both Board of Education and community input regarding these issues, our teachers at these levels are also prepared to step up and improve this program as they too realize the importance of shifting our programs to best meet the needs of this age group and the development of a clearly defined early childhood program. Examples that we can consider for students: more activities develop fine motor skills, such as more art and music, looking at the importance of movement, and so is playtime when it is structured properly and not played for play's sake, but with specific activities in mind to help all students in developing their minds and bodies at this time. The separation of K through 2 from 3 to 5 allows us to consider grade appropriate experiences. Dr. Laurel further goes on to remind us of the goals of the restructuring effort. The overall goals based upon the discussion is to provide longer periods in one building and cut down on the number of transitions our students have to navigate, to manage the use of space available to permit the plan to be sustained well into the future, develop better transportation routes to permit shorter times for students, to enhance the educational opportunities for all students by providing them with the best possible programs within budgetary considerations that allow them to attain better achievement levels overall, and to provide a pre-K program that allows all students to access the program while remaining in state aid allocation of that universal pre-K program. And finally, to adjust the assignment of students to buildings that best meet their needs physically and emotionally. I'm looking forward to this work. I'm looking at this work a bit differently now that we are in the final stages of the upcoming Board of Education decision on our framework for operating over the next 5 to 10 years. This is an opportunity to revamp what we are doing by way of curriculum and instruction, how we are teaching, what we are teaching, and how we teach through the use of technology effectively and efficiently. We can begin to turn the page on the past year over the Princeton plan, but look well into the future and return to our goal regarding 95% proficiency across grade levels in the various disciplines. And that is Dr. Laurel's introductory statement. And I want to just mention Dr. Laurel was unable to be here tonight, but he did send his regards and wanted that read into the record as we look to begin your discussion. So what we had focused on a number of various prioritization questions in the past. To start the discussion, if it pleases the board, we have a number of questions that the board has raised over the past couple of days that I thought we could use as a springboard to discussion questions, to that discussion, and branch off from there. Does that sound like an appropriate plan? Mm-hmm. So the first question that is obvious to most people are: what are the pros and cons from your perspectives of each of the plans? If you were to look at the plans and the data and the information that you've had from the board trustees' perspective, what do you feel are pros and cons to be considered? And that could lead you into asking questions that you would like to have presented to help you formulate that.
Do we want to talk about something that's still on the table and the pros? Or do you want to talk about the cons? What do you guys want to start with?
One of the things we probably can do first is just correct that Plan A is not correct on any of our participations. The way it's been discussed and just highlighted.
It's not that it's not correct, we just need to discuss if we're staying in that, right? If we decide that if the board decides to move forward and stay in Plan A, does the community and does the board feel that after all the conversations that we've had, that it is that we should consider what it looks like to swap Furnace Woods with Frank G. Lindsay, so that our K1 students are in a building with the appropriate number of bathrooms in a smaller space and more appropriate space for them, and the 4 and 5 students are in a space at Frank G. Lindsay, which is again larger rooms, more appropriate space for them.
Question. If we stay in Plan A and you swap those, what happens with EPK? Do they stay at FGF?
No, I think we have room for the 2 here. We do. We have room for the 2.
Okay, we
have room for the 2 here, we just can't expand it. Okay. Or.
Hang on a second, I just want to look. Where's our open rooms? Right. Yeah, I'm looking for open.
That's my question, is if we're gonna have a full community conversation, we should have all of the numbers presented to the community so they understand what we're sitting here debating and thinking of voting on. Because right now, the way it's reflected is not the conversation.
Right, but technically, we're not voting on A. We're voting on the policy for Plan B. We're not voting on Plan A at all. Plan A is status quo. So then after, if we decide that Plan B doesn't work or Plan G doesn't work, then the conversation would come into play. How we've had this whole big conversation because we want to fix the issues in Plan A. That's how this whole thing came about, right? So in an issue in Plan A, one of the biggest issues is the space for the students. And the bathroom situation is one that has come up again and again. And there's a lot of other issues that we could address one by one. That would have to come afterwards.
Yeah, but how are we gonna vote on something and not have the community input on what they would want to see?
We're not,
Because if we decide on A and we say it's A, but now we're switching buildings, that's a conversation that the community needs to be involved in. And honestly, you know, it's something that they need to know, because we had the World Cafe and that was never discussed. And for us to just say, well, we could vote on A and this is what we're presenting of class sizes and all this other stuff, and this is what we're basing our decisions on, but we could decide to just swap the buildings.
So we don't actually have to do that. In our policy, we don't assign buildings to the grades. It just says 2 grades here, 2 grades there. Tomorrow, Mr. Trombley could say, I don't like this, it's not appropriate, and I'm switching these buildings.
I understand that,
So-
but I just feel like it should be a wholesome discussion with the community. We brought them to the World Cafe, and that was never something that I discussed with
I
anybody,
hear
because I wasn't aware of it.
I
So
hear
my question is, we're having a vote in less than, you know, what is it, the 6th? I don't know what day it is anymore. It's the 6th, right? We're still waiting on cost to figure out how much this is gonna cost to taxpayers for whatever we decide to do. And I just think it's wholly irresponsible to not do a full vetting of everything with all of the information at hand before we say to people, this is what we just decided on. I can't decide on something unless I have all of the information in front of me. So when I walk outside and I have a discussion with someone, I can clearly tell them, we decided on this plan because it costs X, Y, it's gonna do X, Y, and Z. Without having any of that information, how are we gonna continue to say that we are letting the public and the community and we're letting them have a voice when we're not sharing any of that information with them?
So wait, so why can't, we can at least discuss the pros and cons.
Well, yes,
I'm accepting but I'm asking that this plan that's here, where the numbers of kids and who's gonna be in what
We
schools
haven't
and.
decided that yet,
So
Tamika, that's part of that.
why don't we start with the pros and cons?
Right, start with pros and cons.
Let's get through those things.
right. And also, I think in all fairness, the way that you're feeling is totally accurate because you weren't part of the board last year, right? So I think that there was a lot of discussion around how inappropriate the facilities were that came before July.
It was done in public.
It's a conversation we're having and it's a decision I have to make as a board member, and we should all have the same amount of information. So if it's something that's being
I'm
discussed.
just defending, I'm
No,
not
I
defending you
understand.
and why,
What I'm saying is I also attended all of those meetings and I need to understand what the parameters are of what we're voting on. And if I don't have all of the information and we're not giving the public all of the information, I think that's really haphazard to do.
okay, I just want to throw in that we are not in any way, shape or form voting on the schools. If we should vote to stay in Plan A, we can have a discussion around what our expectations are as a board, but ultimately that decision will be with the superintendent.
It will, but it also impacts costs because costs will be needed to move those teachers. If we're saying we're moving the first kids to BV and BV kids here, parents also need to be aware that their children are now moved around again from whatever buildings they're in. I mean, this
But
is
the
a big
facilities are
conversation.
inappropriate. That's why we need to talk about the pros and cons, so we can talk about the different situations. We
Okay,
haven't even started that.
okay.
Okay, so let's take it from the top. Where do you guys want to start? Do you want to start with pros of each plan? Do you want to talk about pros and cons of one plan? How do you want to do it? I have no preference. Do you guys want to talk about one plan and then move on to the next? Okay, good. So let's start with Plan A, where we are.
Drive the ship, I'm good.
Okay, Plan A. So if we could just maybe go around the table and share a pro, yeah. You would like to start, Tamika?
I just think there's diversity in the classrooms with all of the students from the district across district lines being together, just in one building all together, instead of them coming together at middle school and then meeting for the first time a lot of their classmates that are there.
I'm gonna piggyback on the diversity. I think that I'm going to acknowledge having all the kids together and the value of having that diversity. I also am gonna acknowledge having in some of the buildings, not all of the buildings, in some of the buildings, the teacher schedules afford them to do collaboration. But in other of the elementary school buildings, their schedules do not afford them to be able to collaborate. So although it's the
Horizontal.
yes,
Great
Although
level
it's a-
collaboration.
Yeah.
Okay, Erica?
I'm writing down, hold on.
Want me to understand?
Pro of the two-year grade banding. A pro is, for me, is diversity, and everyone starting and being together in the building. The pro.
For me, it's special education. I think that being able to slide kids in and out of programs, because I know that it can happen halfway through a year. It's funny too, because I've had experience with it as a person, but I don't think I've realized until being a board member, the benefit of grade banding for special education purposes.
I would say because of the grade banding, teachers tend to stay in their grade levels. And so they become experts in their grade levels that they're teaching.
I like the ICT being in the grade level, so the parent doesn't have to choose between a rotating building on K each year.
I like the, capability for programs to be for an age level, so that we don't have to replicate it throughout, and that we can have age appropriate programs within a building.
I guess I like the enrichment programs that come along with it, just teachers being together, kids being together, everything that comes along with just the curriculum where they can collaborate and work on different ways of working or teaching their students, which is important, because something that might work in my class might not work in Stephanie's class. And we can talk to each other and kind of collaborate on that and say, hey, I did this in this class when I was teaching a certain portion of my curriculum, and that worked great. And I think that that's great for all of the kids in the district, because everyone has different needs. Kids receive education differently, and sometimes someone else's thinking can help you to adjust yourself to just do it in a different way. So I like that portion of it.
I like the teacher collaboration of it too, but I am concerned that okay,
We're doing pros.
Wait, are we, sorry, we're all doing, the idea is it's a different pro, right? We're just gonna
Yes.
keep going with pros, we're not,
Well, so also one thing that I was just noticing was these are grade banding pros, not necessarily plan A.
yeah, so we
So
can
is
repeat
there,
them.
so I guess what I'm asking you guys is, now that we've kind of gone around, does anybody have a pro for plan A, only 2 grade levels in the building? Is there anything specific to that we should highlight as a pro?
The pro, I mean, as you can see in the layout, for me, the pro is that there's some space. But there is a con there. We can't expand program. We can't expand our EPK right now in Plan A, as we know it.
Maybe a little bit.
We couldn't make it a universal UPK, like we couldn't afford, wouldn't have the space to make it available for everybody.
And I think,
That's a con.
That's a con.
yeah, I think what Eric is saying is that we can't expand it to the full capacity of what we have right now. So, right, if we financially,
Utilize all of the resources in house.
yeah,
Not to take words.
yeah.
Okay. Is there any other pros for Plan A specifically, not just about grade banding, but specific to 2-year? The way it is now,
I would just say this gives us more space for growth. That's the one thing that I'd say that's there. We have
Yeah.
the most space for growth. Kids are in smaller sections. The capacity of the building works better, in my opinion, for having the 2 grades together. I think once you start going to the 3rd grade that's in a building, it starts pushing the capacity, and that can also reduce the services that our kids are going to receive. So I think that's a pro of having that ability to grow in that space.
Can you clarify smaller sections for me? And what you mean by that?
And less program.
I'm just saying, I think it was Mr. K that there was a conversation of the gym would have to be shared for specials, right? And he was saying that right now in the gym, I forgot how many square feet that's in there, but if you're now doing 2 classes in there instead of 1, that can hinder capacity, whereas when you have 2 grades, it's a little bit less for the kids. And, you know, as kids grow, they're very rambunctious, so you have to give them room as well to just move around in the gym and enjoy that stuff.
I defer to Margaret to ask you if their gyms are ever used right now in elementary schools with the divider.
I can't say now, but I have, in the time that I've been here, yes, I've seen the split now.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure, like.
I think FGL, Steph, I think before Princeton, I think FGL, it used to happen often.
Yes.
Cause I just remember
But not
it happening.
the other.
We often share staff in the K-5 model, and that means that on occasion, there are 2 PE classes happening simultaneously. Things such as STEAM may be adjusted by pushing science instruction back into the classroom for teachers. This could become once a cycle, so no shares would occur in that particular approach. So this has been looked at when we built the sample schedules to see if it could fit, and we do believe that we wouldn't be pushing the gyms to the capacity of anything more than two classes in there, 1 split by divider.
Are the, wait, should we keep with what we're, the pros and cons? Oh, sorry, yeah, I don't know, I'm just trying to stand.
I was gonna say the other pro for me was just the cafeteria use, right? Everybody that's in district gets to go through BV and see our beautiful cafeteria that was just done, right? Whoever, the kids are in the building. But service for 2 grades instead of 3 grades is gonna be a lot less to do. For 3 grades in a building, service is gonna have to be reimagined, right? Of how we're gonna be able to accomplish service for all those kids as they go through the lines. So that's it.
Well, I'd be curious how we used to serve 6, how did we serve 5th grade in the middle? I know it's less kids in each grade when we were.
Less kids, less sections too, right?
I guess we need to know how many lunch
Sure.
periods.
So I did talk to Ms. Carey today. I wanted to pick her brain about particularly plan B and G, and if she had any problems with the ability to meet the service capacity within those plans. We had a good conversation. She's fantastic and said, you know, I'll make whatever you need to work. Her considerations went to, if it was plan G, she'd probably have to increase by 2 serving opportunities per day. She could easily do that by repurposing staff, because if you do, in that particular case, repurpose BV's kitchen, she could transfer a staff member over to support that extra service. She'd work with a building principal to work on that schedule of what that would look like. And in a similar model, plan B would not be as taxing, but you'd have to do similar opportunity, you'd have to do similar work there. Maybe a purchase of a new register to make sure that would fit. But she feels confident that she can make either of those plans work if we had to adjust from plan A.
So.
Can I just say thank you for including Ms. Carey in the conversation early, and not after we've already made decisions. I appreciate that you included her as we are developing conversation. Thank you.
She's a valued member and very insightful.
Totally agree.
And only said she'd have bad words to say at first, but then she'd make it happen, which is totally allowed.
I lost my train of thought, but, related to this. One of the big things we hear over and over again, is that not enough of our kids are eating lunch together and they don't have enough time, they don't have recess together. So we have 7, 8 sections of students, but there's only 2 of them in the cafeteria at a time. Is there any way? I mean, I would have loved to have seen this fixed a little bit this year. I thought that was what we were aiming for. How will this look next year?
How can we get down a con is lunch.
In Plan A,
I'm saying
right
you're
now?
starting right now.
Yeah, but this might be a con in all the plans, that's why.
But that's okay.
I still have pros.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So one of the pros that I think is just going back to Dr. Oliveira's workshop that we had, and she talked about the pitfalls of transitions and how we can start to just create cohorts of kids, sort of like the Harry Potter houses. And that actually we can do internally as an administration, which probably wouldn't cost us, the district, any money or the taxpayers any money. So that's a pro for me in Plan A, because we wouldn't be adding to the budget for anything else. All of the stuff, coordinating lunches, making sure that the 3 elementary schools are coordinating their activities together, actually saves us money by not having to do any moves or any construction or moving to any other thing that, because the honest truth is, we got all these great ideas of things that we could do to make Plan A better, but the truth is the district has never done any of them. We haven't even done any of the work in order to make Plan A better before we decide to discuss moving to something else. So that to me is a pro of.
So.
That's a banding plan, right?
that's-
Every one of the
that's a banding
banding plans would benefit.
That's right.
from
That's
that.
a banding.
I don't see that as a pro, and I think that's something we need to do.
Like
in many
bridges or
business
banding.
plans.
Like, that doesn't happen in it, that happens on the chase. It's
You know, but it's a pro
a
for A.
banding pro, not a.
It's actually a pro for.
But I'm talking about
Yeah.
the cost
You'd
as
actually
well
have to
that's
solve it.
associated with it.
It's good in detail. I'm not following you on the cost piece though. It's free, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying it's
It's free
free,
no matter what.
it's administrations working together, us working with them together to develop these cohorts and do the things, the different things that she outlined that we could be doing in the plan that wouldn't cost us any money. So to me,
So-
that's a big savings.
saying that.
So the pro is there's no cost.
Okay.
I think that's
The
your
pro
pro.
is there's a savings, there's no cost
It's
to
not a savings.
doing
there's
what
no-
we're doing right now.
But then that leads us into the conversation of if we stay where we are, what is the cost to outfit the buildings for the grades that they're in? And what is the cost to improve the plan, to fix the problems, that the ones you can fix, that the plan created? So that pulls us into a cost.
It's a con, the facilities.
There is a con with the limitation of the facilities that the students are now in that needs to be addressed in this, no matter what plan you pick.
So here's an example of how preemptively assigning the dollar sign. We wanted to be very accurate in doing it. I were to say, what was a cost of Plan A? In December or late November of 2023, we could say and put a definite dollar to what it took to address transportation concerns. Purchase of 2 additional buses, additional monitors on the bus, we could quantify that out, having cut the purchase orders, having cut everything. So as an example, we could say that that's a quantified cost of staying in Plan A.
But I guess the question that would arise with that, were those buses needed because of Plan A, or were they other
Yes.
buses that were being retired?
No,
No,
We
it was
needed
both.
replacement? And then I would want to see also what the transportation cost was the prior year before Princeton plan was implemented, so I can understand and see what the variance is the
We did
next
that.
year.
We did that last year.
It was 100% more.
Yes.
Okay, so a pro for me, what would be a big pro, and I'm not sure if this exists, is, I mean, diversity is great, but I really care about student outcomes and test scores, and that all kids are getting what they need. So if you could show me increase in test scores, decrease in the amount of students receiving reading and math services, then the student outcomes piece, I don't know if it's a pro or con, because I think that we need to present that information.
I think I would argue that no matter what model we're in, we've got to be measuring that.
Right.
And we have to be relentless in pushing for better outcomes.
That's right. That is why
A,
giving
B, or G.
that's
we
why-
should be able to-
That's why you're giving A time, you actually have a starting point of what your scores are in order to compare it to the following year and the year after. But if we decide midway now to just change gears and go to a different model, we're starting over the measure again. And we're all here to put kids
Tamika,
first,
I
right?
think we're talking about pros. So if your pro is it's no change for next year, and there's nobody moving, then that's the pro.
That is a pro.
If the pro is that we have no new costs, you can list that
Okay,
as that's
a
a pro.
pro is we would have a baseline to start of measurables
Okay.
that we can compare for the students and performance.
Okay,
So I'm actually gonna, and Margaret, I don't know if you're taking notes right now.
I am.
But, and Mike as well. So I was on a WISPA call around curriculum. And each of our school districts talk in small groups and larger groups about how we, as boards, discuss our curriculum, bring our results, bring our curriculum to our community. Something that we've done little drips and drabs. But a big part of that was, most schools see big presentations around test scores. And I'm talking Regents exam, AP exam, everything. They compare themselves to the state measure. They compare themselves to the local area, but they go back. So like, remember when we were talking about how we really don't have a baseline to this?
Yeah.
Well, they go back to 2016, 2017. So those school districts are doing it where they go back to when they put in new curriculum. So let's say we started a new curriculum in 2017. We would go back to 2017 and we would see how our results went when we adopted that new curriculum. So more importantly than strength and plan, grade banding, where are our kids? We have to know where our kids in high school now are right compared to where they are compared to the state. It's not just an elementary issue. So to that point, I think we need to see this.
yes.
So we will dip our toes into that after the board's conversation as one of those items that we need to continue to discuss beyond this decision. Dr. Roller and I will present a detailed, and along with Benita and Lisa's help as well, a detailed New York State testing program and regions program presentation for you. And we will challenge the board as well to consider that as, if you paid attention to the Brad Geis information, that is one measure that we can look at to begin to look at student outcome data in terms of how we can improve programs to continuously improve as a school district. So yes, we will be able to provide that data and dip our toe into that and talk about what that might look like when the board is finishing the discussion. Thank you.
Are there any more pros for Plan A specifically that aren't about grade banding, but are specific to Plan A? No. Okay. Yeah. I can't see the
I'm
others.
sorry, that's okay. I was just gonna say, Mr. Golden's the turtle habitat is amazing, so everybody should see that. I think everybody in the district should see that, but it doesn't matter, it's not a good.
It's a pro, and I think we, Mr. Golden will be able to,
He's asked me 3 times. He's like, what am I doing with this?
I think he'll be able,
I'm like, you gotta replicate it.
when the smoke comes out of the velociraptor, we just have.
Not that I want to be negative, but do we want to share the cons of Plan A? And I think the first thing that we should talk about is facilities, because it's been an ongoing conversation with the board. And Tamika mentioned already that we were, needing to really address it. Does anybody want to start with?
I can.
Okay.
So lack of bathroom within classrooms. So Frank G has the least number of classrooms with bathrooms in it. And our youngest students are there, and it has the least amount of gang bathrooms. And our youngest, or most amount of gang bathrooms, and our youngest students are there.
Armand said tonight, the architect during the walk, that it was more important to have a bathroom in a kindergarten classroom from the state education department standpoint than it was to have the size of the classroom be
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have a different problem?
You could just go.
Jeremy,
Are we going right to left?
just put your thing on because we can't hear it.
You can go.
Let's just focus on the facility things, just shoot them out. I know that
Stairs.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Do you want to do another one or do you want?
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say that we have K2 at, I'm sorry, Frank G, which is not as central for the youngest kids being from the farthest ends of the district to come through. So it's a much further ride, especially with the EV Frank G busing scenario, using that facility for K1. Many of the youngest kids go from the outer edges of the district all the way to EV first and then come to Frank G. So for me, it's a facility utilization from a constant.
They can't hear you, Jared.
Still?
There. Hey.
Even the rest of the, if we are not talking into our microphone, then people at home can't hear. We have to be clear, try to speak one at a time and speak directly into our microphone. That's why it's good to just.
I think the second floor is an issue.
Amelia, you have any?
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna to Jen, 'cause I think you had more.
I was gonna say stairs, right, so we our only building that uses stairs to get between classrooms is in our building with our smallest kids. So 2 floors,
Cafeteria is largest.
and we have the largest cafeteria, so we have the largest cafeteria with our smallest kids. The gym is debatable, but maybe it's not that much bigger, it appears bigger, but it could be debatable, we probably have to get Armand to actually confirm that. But it does have a
But when
divider that works.
And I said the cafeteria because I'm thinking of events, graduations, right? The outdoor space, MGL is much more space for hosting people.
Yeah, between inside and outside. So.
Any other facilities, Erica?
Did Armand confirm that the square footage of the Frankie Lindsay gym is the same as Furnace Woods and BB?
I don't know, I had asked, remember? And I don't know, and I'm pretty sure that they are.
I thought they were.
I feel like I heard something that they are, but it was the coloring of the floor that was mixed.
But did that come from KSQ?
No, that came from Jim. That came from.
At minimum, they are the same size.
My con would be
It might be.
that not all the classrooms are being used as classrooms. You have the tech department there, so you're, building utilization is not.
So I probably should have kept the architect here, but we still within the response specific.
Can we find that out for sure?
You have a question?
For me, a con is that, so, and I only know this because my kids are at Frenchman. When our kids use the track often, they were over there a lot. They ran the track, they walked the track as bigger, older kids. So, I do not believe that our kindergarten and first graders are possibly able to do that. They are using it. And the other, I mean, a pro to this is also that they walk to the library. We've got that.
Yes.
So, I mean, I just think it would be great, like the kids here don't have access to anything like that, the older kids.
Yeah.
So that's
And I guess that's just a utilization, right? I mean, like, that's a great
point to have more grades in one building.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be a benefit of B and G, would be more kids have access to library walking for longer number.
Or the high school use.
Or the high school use.
Yeah, because that was a con when we were in community schools, because French and Lindsay had that option and BB and Furnace Woods did not.
And there's the track and field, did you see that?
Yeah, track.
Yeah.
Are we still on facilities or not?
Hey, we could be on anything else.
I think a con of Plan A is not having that close-knit community feel. When all the kids, when you have neighborhood schools, the closeness of the school, the proximity, you can help your neighbor get their kid off the bus because they're getting off the bus at the same time as your kid that they're going to school with. So that neighborhood feel is lost in this plan.
Which ties into what I just wrote down with families. Typically, you don't have kids, I mean, God bless those that do, but very rarely you have 2 children in one school with a 2-year grade, back to back, yes.
And that limits family engagement, because if I have 3 kids in 3 different schools, how can I volunteer? Because I was class parent.
More
There's-
difficult.
It makes it impossible. And we know the number one predictor of student success is family engagement.
So more than just being a class parent, because I think there's a lot that people say about being a class parent. Class parents are not invited into the classroom that much. They're just not. I mean, I was a class parent from the time my kids were in kindergarten until the time they were in fifth grade. And I can count, I was a PTA president and I volunteered at every other thing that we did at elementary school and middle school and even high school now, right? So I was lucky enough to be in the building a lot, but one of the cons, and I'm not sure if this can be changed, is you can't get volunteers and parent engagement if you have events on the same day. So like, if you have school store on this Friday in the same day, like I can't pick a day. I can't be at both schools, to be with the kids and picture day as well, right? So those are things that like volunteer opportunities are more difficult for families, the more schools you have.
I also want to play devil's advocate when you say that you have your neighborhood school, your community school. You could just now have a larger neighborhood that you are working with.
How can I help my friend who lives in Cortland Manor pick up their kid from the bus if my bus stop is on like
Your
that?
child can take the bus home with your child.
They're not allowed to.
Yes, they are.
Well, no, on paper they're not, but
Yes, they are.
You can send a note to your teacher.
You can send a note and your child can take the bus home with someone that's also.
That's new this year, because last year was.
Correct, I think.
Oh, last year that was an option.
I also think just like the PTA, now that we have one PTA for all three of the elementary schools.
That's a
I think
pro.
the administration it is, but I'm saying that's a pro, we should add to that,
Yeah, we
I know
should.
about that. But I think that's one of the things that we could be doing, right? Because it's a con, but we haven't done any of those things where the administration is coordinating events to ensure that the parents who have multiple kids in schools can attend all of them a little bit easier. So it's a pro, it's a con for I understand you, but I just think that there's a lot of things that Dr. Oliveira talked about that could be done to kind of just streamline and also help our families that are struggling. So I feel like we need to do the work.
I also think though, that your parent that has 3 different kids in 3 different schools with 3 different start times and end times. When people are like, well, I have 3 kids and one was in middle school and one was in high school. They weren't little, they didn't need that supervision. So and what else is different? In the same instance, when we talk about, our low income families and what they need, they don't have the luxury to take off work and volunteer. So I remember my time on the PTA. My time on the PTA was the same parents that volunteered over and over again. So you had a core group of 10 or 12 parents that, not because the other parents, it's just that the other parents couldn't, their jobs and their lives prevented them from doing so. And I think when you spread it out, you diluted that core group of parents. So I think that in that sense, it is, PTA involvement, I would say volunteers, they're probably struggling to get them.
So I think we put parent engagement is more difficult. Volunteer opportunities is more difficult. And more transition.
More, because you have more buildings to volunteer in, but your opportunity to spend the time with each of your kids is fewer.
I guess it should be for multiples, maybe that would be for.
Correct, because that is one of my questions that I asked also. I wanted to understand how many families are affected by having multiple children in all 3 of the elementary school at the same time, as well as 2 children in the elementary school at the same time, so that way we can see where we can make certain changes to adjust things.
Yes. And Benita was able to provide, that information. I'm just locating it right now.
Another kind would be time on the bus.
Definitely bus routes alone.
Yeah, I just think the length of time on the bus and my young kid getting home at 4 o'clock and me getting in the door with them at 4:03, it's a long day for your smallest one.
I also think a con, with this plan is the number of miles and how we're impacting our footprint, our carbon footprint on our buses and the depreciation of our buses.
So our lifespan of our buses is cut in half.
Well, we don't know, we have actually.
I think you did that.
Oh, we need to run it with, right, which has 2 more buses than it did previously.
So, right, we had 4 buses, but they made last longer.
Can we do that? Can we compare miles from last year without including activity? Similar to what we did when we looked at this compared to the previous year.
Or just let them. Yeah.
Well, I don't think
We
we
just
can
want
say
to
the cost of
From 2022, 2023 to.
Yeah.
I would say from the first day of school through through November 30th. All right, and then that equal number of days from the previous year through November 30th, right? Whatever it is. 60 schools, whatever that number is, how many, what is our, and then project it forward and exclude sports and all that, because it's relevant here. But on our elementary buses, when we did the comparison last year around this time, we noted it was plus or minus 100% increase in miles driven, right? If we
Wouldn't it
could-
still be the same total miles driven?
Well, I don't know.
Each bus is doing a little less.
We don't know. It may end up being that they're slightly more or slightly less, but we've added 2 buses into the mix. So if that's the case and the mileage is the same, then we've really added quite a bit of an expense to busing. Because if the miles have remained the same, but there's 2 more buses doing it, then we're depreciating 2 additional buses quicker.
Well, I think the other thing that we should look at is just the bus routes that we're doing, right? And if that has been reviewed and how improvements can be made, because if modifications can be done to the schedule, then that would also impact that. And I don't think any of that was, I mean, some of it was done, but not a lot, because I can tell you, my son gets picked up from my street, goes past BV all around the circle in the village, all past BV, all the way to Furnace to FGL. And then they go back again around to drop them off at BB. So
They probably do a whole route.
I understand that, but there's another bus that comes and gets the Furnace Wood, the FGL children, right? So why aren't we just doing
No,
that?
no one's there on the same bus.
Isn't the morning FGL and BB the
You might
same?
be right. I
I think the morning is FGL and BB is a pickup together because they stop
Yeah,
at one and then.
But I'm just saying,
But
like,
the afternoon is not.
there's efficiencies to be found in just the schedules that we're doing.
So for me, I think the length on the bus has been a big issue, but also having multiple buses
For one family.
for one family. Is a lot. I also think that we learned a lot from some of the speakers that came in to see us. And not that this can't be fixed, but one of our cons right now is that I think we've diluted the sense of building relationships. So with your principal to families, student to teacher, where you can see your previous teacher and staff vertically, not horizontally. You know, that longevity, that meaningful relationship that you used to build with staff members, between the families, the siblings, all of that kind of went by the wayside. And I'm not saying that it can't be fixed. I'm just saying that it's something that's been
It's a
diluted.
weakness that we
Yeah.
have to strengthen in any way.
In whatever plan.
Correct. So a con is that we don't have it built in, because I don't think there is any time to build it in, because there's only so many hours in a day to have horizontal collaboration between the different buildings. No, horizontal and vertical,
Oh, okay.
right? Because before we had a lot of horizontal conversations when we were in K-5. Now we have horizontal, sorry, we have horizontal now, we have to improve our vertical.
Yes.
And we have to improve our horizontal, but right now there's not a lot of conversations from building to building to building to building, between the 3 buildings and even the middle school, right? That's a con. We have to work on that no matter what. And then I had
But
another
it's
one.
the most transitions. I mean, it is the most transition.
Yeah, and that was
even
my,
mentioning because
yeah, so
I mean,
too many transitions.
one of the reasons we started this conversation was around the number of transitions for students. We heard a lot about how, I mean, and how important it is to have stability for the teachers, right? And the kids need the most stability. They need the routine. So that's how this conversation kind of started in the first place. So this plan has the most transitions. So that's the biggest con. Is that there's the most transitions for kids in this plan.
yeah, I'm sorry.
And, you know, and I know we're Hen Hud and we have to do we have to figure out what works and what's best for Hen Hud, but when you look across the United States, at all the elementary schools across the United States, you're not gonna find and I've looked and I've done a lot of research on this, so I can make sure that I'm correct. There are no schools in like the top 200 or 300 of the US News World Report in New York State that have 2-year grade banding. They just are not there. So there are ones with 3-year grade banding. There are ones with K3 or K3, 4, 5. There's ones that have middle school or 5th grade at middle school that are in that list, but there are no 2-year grade banded schools. So
I would say
Again,
also,
that's a fact.
I would
But
also
I
say
just
like
wanna
we
say
just,
that I go back to Dr. Peg Alvera with the bridges that were supposed to be put in place when the Princeton plan was done to make those transitions easier. We haven't done any of those yet, right? Like the kids haven't gone to the schools that they're going to meet their teachers and start to get familiar with the buildings. We haven't done anything yet. And I understand what you're saying about the transitions, but there was a New York Times article that talked about the highest performing students in the United States are military children. They move around all the time.
Wait a minute,
So
I
they
read that
figured
article.
out, right?
I read that article, Tamika.
But I think it's
The
our-
military is not a public school, and they do not have the same constraints on them that public education has on them. So the military also groups differently than we do in public
Well,
schools.
what I'm saying is, if they have figured out ways of doing the bridges that Dr. Olivera talked about, we can implement some of those in our current plan, which we haven't done. We rolled out, the truth is, the district rolled out a plan and didn't put any of the placements of things that were needed for it in place.
That's accurate.
that's
That's
actually very
accurate, right?
accurate.
But
We
instead of us, like we know that, right? But we as a board, we've taken certain steps and we're all trying to do what's right. But we haven't taken the steps to try to adjust or put those things in place to see.
I would disagree.
I disagree.
No, listen, she's right. You went to Princeton Plan during COVID, when the community was locked out. It was fear that we needed to save $3 million, haphazardly done without planning, without predicting the costs originally. And we're now left with a plan in buildings that don't fit the students that are housed in them. We are left with more transition, and transitions are not good. There is learning loss for each transition. So this haphazard plan that was supposed to save money, that has created a major hardship for, I would say, about half the families that live in this community. It needs to be fixed. It just does.
It does. And we identified things last year that needed to be fixed in this year.
I don't think that's the board's fault. It's
That's
as
not
if
the board's fault.
we were sleeping on this challenge.
Jeremy, I didn't say it was the board's fault. I'm just saying there are things that we could be doing to improve on what we have that we have never done. That's all, that's the only thing I'm noting here, is that nothing has been done to improve what we have. That's all I'm noting on what I'm seeing.
We do some things around transportation, but I'm gonna piggyback on this. When I'm looking at it as a taxpayer, I don't wanna throw good money after bad money. Or is it bad money after good money? What is it? All I'm saying is, I don't wanna sink more money into something that is not gonna give us the educational outcomes that the kids deserve.
But how do we know that? How do we quantify?
Because of the haphazard way and all of the problems that you have.
So
That it was
I
done.
asked you this question, right? We go to a different model and a different plan. It takes a year for us to figure out what the kinks are, right? And then we still have to work on those things then, right?
I think we actually found a lot of kinks and we learned from the way that this was done. And we actually changed our approach, first with the community and having all of the talks that we've had and with the teachers. And actually listening and knowing that everyone has a different experience, right? So what we learned about grade banding here can help us with any plan we go in the future.
But there's still gonna be things that we're gonna discover as we go, right?
There's some things in this we discover as we go. Right?
I think we all have to acknowledge, and I will be the first to say it, there was nobody that wanted community schools probably more than me, right? And I sat through months and months and months of listening to our administrators, to our families, to graduates. And I listened and I took in all of the perspectives. And for me to sit here and say that it has to be this, or it has to be that on either far end of the spectrum would be so unauthentic and dishonest. We have learned from the past. We've done a lot of homework to look into the future, and nothing that we do here tonight or next week is going to be perfect, but we have to be willing to be all in on it together. All of us, right?
And continuously improve.
And continuously improve. So I think it's important that we keep going through the pros and the cons so that we can then sit here and say, well, these are pros, but you know what? I see these pros in each model. These are cons and we can avoid it in this model. And then prioritize, because you know what? Not one of these plans is going to be perfect. Not one of these plans is going to fit every single bill and every single criteria. There are going to be things that we don't love, right? Because even as much as one person loves two-year grade banding and one person loves community schools, those two things are not perfect either. So at the end of the day, I think we need to get through the pros and cons and then weigh out how many pros live in each one. What are the pros we really strive for? How many cons live in each model, and which cons can we accept and work with? Because they're going to exist. Nothing's going to be perfect.
I also think it's important for us to know the cons. For something that we might be picking so that we can get ahead of it.
Yeah.
And it is no longer a con if we have a solution before it even begins.
I agree.
100%. 100%.
So are there any other pros and cons that anybody wants to add to Plan A so that we can talk about some of the other?
Well, I
plans?
guess, so probably not Plan A, but in grade banding in general, we were able to introduce UPK, and I'm not sure we would have been able to do that as equitably in a community
It'll
school.
be more complicated. Yeah.
So I
That's a great banding, that's a great brand banding.
it's grade banding.
So I would follow up on a data point. Denise did a great job of pulling the number of households going to one school at the elementary level is 567. The number of families at the elementary level with students in two schools is 152. And the households with students going to three elementary schools is 10.
See, last year was 9.
I wonder how many, but how many of these are back to back?
We don't know, it just means that they have, they're in two schools. They could have 3 kids
They could.
go
Yeah,
to 2
They
schools,
could, yeah.
right?
They could have more than.
You could have
kids,
6 kids in 2 schools.
but they're,
Just okay. It's just how you're spread.
right, like
one
if you
school.
have twins or they're 2
Yeah.
or 3, then that's counted one.
Okay.
And that's.
So that only covers this year.
That's this year's data.
Right,
We
so it
did
doesn't
do this,
account for,
the Carmen did this.
Last year, right?
Last year, it's very close, actually, it's 9 or 10.
Yep.
And then it was 175 was the household with 2 schools. And I forgot the other one.
Yeah, so it is very close.
It's very close.
Okay, it's good to know. Right.
And that was updated in the board.
All right, so let's move over to Plan B. Can we talk about the pros of Plan B? I mean, or people at home, Plan B is K-2 at Furnace Woods, K-2 at BV. And you would be zoned to your closer K-2 school. And then
Pre-K.
Oh, like, yeah, they'd be pre-K through 2, and then you would have 1 3 through 5 building, which would be FGL. That's Plan B. So why don't we start with the pros of Plan B?
one less transition as compared to Plan A.
Little kids closest to home.
Students will be in a school for 1 more year.
Easier for families.
Make up for this bill.
No, that's okay. I'm so good.
Bus ride for our little kids should be short.
Sure, that's right.
And I think we also discussed, last year, we thought we would save between 10 and 20% on mileage, busing, and gas, if I remember correctly.
Okay, then there'll be a slight decrease in the cost of transportation. Okay.
I think you could tailor curriculum around community schools. So if we go to Plan B and there's less transition, it gives you more time to get to know the student and the family and to tailor the school experience around the students and families, where it's not changing so much
Compared to Plan A.
compared to Plan A.
Well,
So you're meaning, sorry.
I don't know if I understand that.
Yeah, so if I'm in Plan B and my kid's in the school longer, you know my kid. So when you go to place them, so he's in kindergarten, you go to place them in first grade. You know not to place them with this student, and you know that maybe he needs extra supports. So when he moves to third grade, you know he needs more support here. Or maybe you know my kids are very shy. Which he's not. Building staff, building staff has more
You
knowledge.
get to know not just the teachers, the TAs, the staff, everyone, even the security guards, who when you're dropping off your kid, they know you by face. The way that you have right now in Plan A, there is no way they know every parent by face.
And that would be a pro change.
Right,
Yeah.
you just have longer to know the parents.
I mean, Plan B gives you the idea of community schools and grade banding in one plan. And if you got so lucky, right, because we don't know how much we could expand UPK, but if you got so lucky that you got a spot in your community K-2 school, your child could be there for pre-K, K1, 2, 4 years instead of 3.
That's also a con.
I know, I don't wanna get into the cons, but we don't know how much larger the preschool could get because,
Well, we only know we only have 2 rooms
right, at BV,
at BV.
right? So, we'll get to that cons part, but
I think a hybrid approach gives you the best of both worlds.
It'll.
more pros,
It allows for additional classroom space.
you have room for growth.
Well, not that much at BB.
Well, you don't have it actually if you have UPK.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's only 2 rooms right now at BV in Plan B.
Without UPK or with UPK?
I just have a question about UTK.
I think Margaret would put 1 and 1, so you have room for 2 more at BV.
No, I think there's 2 in BB and 1 in Furnace Wood.
But I have a question about UPK, and it's not a pro or con, it's just a question. In that case, if we were to expand UPK, would that have to be at our cost? Like, would we be able to get an outside provider in for one building, for 2 different buildings, like one class?
That's a really good question that do you know the answer?
So Margaret is
I'm sorry.
with, a potential provider tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that could be asked of that partner tomorrow, that potential partner tomorrow.
Absolutely.
If they would be willing to be in 2 places.
Yes.
But, and only have potentially 3 classrooms.
Only have potentially the UPK. I don't know that,
Saying 2 and 1.
I don't know that that was as much a factor. How many? But I will ask them tomorrow. The 2 locations, I think we didn't discuss that at all, so.
Yeah, that we need to know.
Yeah.
And I think just while we're talking about it, we've heard a lot from the community who likes Plan B. And they like that you can have UPK through 2, but the truth is that we would probably need to have more UPK at Furnace Woods than at BB. So you could live potentially on the side of a line that would be zoned to BB, but guess what? You don't get into pre-K there. You have to actually bring your kid to Furnace Woods.
That would be a problem.
That would be a problem.
In our projections, our projections do show Furnace Woods with less projected enrollment.
Right, it doesn't make sense. We need the space at BG for UPK, not at Furnace Woods. You have a couple classes here, but you need more at BG and we don't have it at BG. So you'd have to be willing to stay with a smaller UPK program, I think, in Plan B.
We have 2 classes already slotted for pre-K in Plan B,
Okay,
and we have 2 open classrooms.
okay.
So there's that.
So that will allow 4 of
Yeah.
the 6 classrooms into PP if necessary.
Or 7, right? Mhm.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Oh, and
about
7.
UPK? I hate to go back to Plan A, but no matter what plan we do, we are outsourcing UPK, correct? Like if we stayed with Plan A, we're still looking to outsource UPK.
We are still looking.
Right, not to say that, but we are still, so just
evaluating
people
it.
at home know.
Well, so then while we're on it, why don't we explain,
Okay.
right? So well, do you want to explain?
Sure, the district.
I just want to make sure I don't
Sure.
say anything.
The district, primarily, and this district has utilized state funding for universal pre-K programs. The district, as long as it remains within allowable expenditures focused on universal pre-K programs, can use that money to break up however they see fit best to fund that program. Do you want to spend all of the allotment that the state gives you based upon a logarithm on outsourcing to another provider? Do you want to take that money and say, we can have this many children if we have our own teachers teach it and provide transportation, or fill out however you want to use that money to support activities that would be used for UPK? So there's a limited amount of grant funding that you can use to support a myriad of programmatic implementations for UPK. Or the district could decide to utilize general fund budgets to enhance that. Currently, the district does not dip into the general fund to support UPK.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's
Excuse me.
expanded.
We've expanded, yes.
So if we outsource it, just so if I'm listening from home, outsourcing us, it gives you more seats than if we keep it in-house and fund it from the
Do
taxpayers.
the math, right? So if we had, not even that, let's just pretend every teacher costs $100,000 and you need 7 sections. That's almost $1 million for this program. So I want the people at home to realize that UPK is a fortune without the government help.
Yes.
Without the grants, we cannot afford it. So we have to be very smart, and we're only getting $5,400 per student. So if you multiply that out by the students, that's not covering the ability to just throw 10 teachers or 6 teachers or 7 teachers into the grade preschool, and make it happen.
When we're talking about costs, because a lot of people in the World Cafe were like, oh, well, it's a minimal cost, and you're saying, we're clearly showing that it is not a minimal cost.
Very expensive.
I think that it's a great time to segue into our projections. I mean, maybe you don't think so, just so people know that we are being fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
And our projections of what our tax increases are going to be, we have to keep that in mind. So how can we keep a program that we have and have the taxpayers not incur an additional expense?
Can we focus on?
Okay, we do that, but I just don't want them to lose sight of.
Segue, but we need to get through this.
I guess one question I have is what's the liability with having like an outsourced person? Like if they're using our facilities and something happens,
There's insurance.
well, who covers that? Is that the district that covers that, and what's the cost that comes with that? The district.
No, they do.
So there's a request for proposal that will go out that would delineate, and there's sample requests for proposals that we would use that indicate they have to provide their own insurance, they have to provide the certificate of liability, they have to provide they have to agree to the curriculum that is approved, and they would submit their RFP.
I was gonna say what the timeline would be for that RFP to go out and for us to get feedback and for the district to make a decision. Like, what does that look like? Is that 2 months? Is that a year?
Normally that RFP goes out, I believe, in December.
We have to do it every
We
year.
usually do ours in January with like a 2 or 3 week turnaround. And then you read through it, the attorneys read through it with you, for you. The places that we collaborate with and the people that usually answer an RFP, they are so highly regulated. And there are so many requirements from the state for them to even enter into this process. So that's why a lot of people shy away from it, because there are so many hoops for them to jump through to be eligible to collaborate in this program.
I think it's noteworthy for the people at home to know that most districts outsource UPK. Somers, Yorktown, my district. It is a common way to provide a service without the taxpayer incurring the expense.
And for the people who are listening, maybe and paying attention to this UPK conversation differently, it is the $5,400 is per student. You can't take 10-8 and just offer it to fewer seats and apply it to more kids. You can only use their money per student, and they offer the exact same dollar amount, at least currently, right, Margaret? Currently, they offer the exact same dollar amount in Westchester County as they do in the farthest edges of the state or in the middle of the Adirondacks. Everybody gets the exact same dollar value per seat. Regardless, there's no cost of living adjustment.
Right.
Just for clarification, is it our teachers doing UPK now? It is, our teachers are.
Two of them. So the board approved 2 teachers, to teach 36, and 2 TAs to teach 36 students at Green.
Gotcha, thank you.
And what do we support in some part?
Yeah, how many seats do we have outsourced at other?
We have 18, and I think we have 23, 24 seats and 2 other collaborators.
And we pay from the general fund $100,000 plus or minus above and beyond the expense, the income from the state for the subsidy, roughly. And that's if you don't count the cost of the actual people giving the program, but if you count the 2 teachers that we hire to replace the 2 teachers that are teaching the program, they can count the actual teachers and just the physical cost of the EPK. It's far greater.
One question I had is, can we set the curriculum for them?
No.
State
I'm sorry.
No matter
I
who
was
does
asking
it.
if we could set the
We
curriculum.
don't spell them, but
Okay, so it would have to go through what's mandated by the state for them.
They have to follow the exact. They have to follow the UPK. There are pre-K standards in New York State. So as long as their curriculum meets the standards, they are able to choose the curriculum that they wish.
Now, I guess one of the questions I had was, can they take other kids out of the district?
They do.
They do,
Yes.
okay. So it wouldn't be just reserved for just our district?
Their programs can take whatever kids that they can house. Our money is just for our students.
Oh, gosh.
So they tuition other children.
So they can tuition other children into the
Absolutely.
district if we expand it, okay.
Wait, look, Margaret. I want to piggyback, 'cause I didn't think about that, Tanika. That's a good question. If we used an outside collaborator and they came and offered UPK in our facilities, we can't limit it to only our district residents?
I don't know if we can or we can't from our perspective, but from their perspective, if they can, let's say they have 100 seats. And it ends up that Hendrick Hudson families only send 70 children. They have 30 seats that are available. I'm not sure if we can restrict them and say you can only take the 70 we gave you. I don't know that yet because we haven't had that situation on our premises. But they certainly could tuition the 30 other seats. And we have collaborators who in their facilities tuition in.
Right, in private facilities.
Right, I don't know the answer.
Could you
That's what
find
we
out?
haven't done.
That's a great question. Could you find out tomorrow
Sure.
during that meeting?
Because that would.
Like, does Yorktown allow, can I go pay for my kids, if I had a pre-K eligible kid, to go to Yorktown's UPK if there were more grant dollars available from the state?
No.
You'd have.
But hear me out. If they,
You're paying out of pocket.
but if they give, you wouldn't give them more than the seats available, the number of grant dollars you have, right?
I don't know the answer to
No,
that.
we wouldn't, right? We would restrict what access they have to.
So
our
you would say,
facilities.
what we would say, so the state last year estimated that we could potentially have 113
Yep.
4-year-olds this year. We didn't come close to that. So we would say to whoever we're collaborating with
Right.
on site, we have X amount of seats available. So that means you have potentially, I'll say 5, 6 classrooms, because they have to think about staffing.
Right.
I don't know, because we've not yet had that engagement, if we can say, but you may only take our students. So if you only get half of that, that's all you get. I don't know if we can restrict them, or if they could turn around and say, well, you're not fully subscribed, so in order to make my program run, I need to tuition kids to pay for these teachers.
So I definitely want to answer that, because that would change my decision, I think, based on how I feel about UPK. I think there's no bad 4-year-olds, right? But let's just say if you were in Plan B, do we want outside children in the buildings with our district children?
I would like our administrators.
And their parents come, like, do you know what I'm saying? It just feels not right.
Don't we have tuition students here already?
Yeah, that's true.
We do, but
We have tuition students in.
it's like a first grade, and it's because they have special need.
Yeah, but
They've been approved.
And we also screen them very well.
Right, exactly. It's a whole different ballgame.
We're not letting somebody else.
Can anybody pay to send their kids here if they want to?
Yeah.
So we offer tuition to public school kids. You
Yeah,
can,
but this is different. It could be potentially 44-year-olds.
I just wanna know, why don't we just?
That's a lot.
That's great. I'm just wondering about the control we would have once we start outsourcing things and what they can do in our district. Like, let's just say a parent decides they didn't want to send their kid, but then they changed their mind and now they're full. Right now, someone that's in district doesn't get the service and it's in our facilities. So I think that's a question that we should have the administration.
We should certainly find out.
It'd be part of the RFP process, I believe, within the regulations. You could set those parameters too.
Or you could just call Yorktown or Somers and see what, because Yorktown is expanding the program.
So what's interesting is, not to bring personal, but my hometown UPK program, my son could have gone all the way up. I live just north of the Jersey border. He could have gone all the way up in mid-Rockland. It was the providers that were willing to partner with the school district. So I believe if we are telling the providers they can use our space, we may be able to have more control over that. Whereas if you use that reverse engineering as an example, that district chose to partner with different providers outside of the district boundaries.
And you have a meeting tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow, yes.
Okay. So let's get back to our pros and cons. Is there any other pros for Plan B? Because I think we kind of got off on our UPK.
Can we? Sure, here's what I have listed we were on Plan B pros. More access to the library and walking, that was listed before. One less transition compared to Plan A, students in the school for one more year, kids closer to home, anticipated shorter bus rides. The idea that you could tailor curriculum around community school-based concepts, knowledge of student-leaded programmatic decisions, a blend of community schools and grade banding in one plan. If your UPK placement was in the same place, you would enter into kindergarten, you could extend your time at that school, and a hybrid approach blends the best of both plans.
I think, I think building utilization as far as facilities is probably better.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you said that or not.
No,
I did not.
Okay.
Sorry. I'll worry that.
There's a chance that siblings could be here.
Yeah. There's also a pro for this one, for me was getting the kids together earlier. Like if we're calling this like modified community school, the kids are together in 3rd grade as opposed to 6th.
Well, I think I think we're going it off, are we going off of A? I think we're going off of A.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that was one of the things we talked about last year when we were getting pushback about the community school. Right, like the kids and people together.
I also think Plan B creates cohorts by community, not arbitrarily, because we pick kids and stick them in a cohort, which would be what happens in Plan A.
Yes and no.
But that could be a plus or a minus.
Yeah.
You may not meet, your best friend may end up living across town and you won't meet till 3rd grade. Because you wouldn't have been in school with them from K to 2.
But
So-
most best friends. Didn't say.
No, I think they said 8th grade.
eighth grade, it was like your friend circles in front of you, K through two. I think there was someone maybe mentioned that it was a mental health professional. I'm not an expert on that.
Okay. I was pro. Anybody pro? No.
The pro here with, did we put transportation?
Yeah.
One of the pros was, cause we got emails about this, with the space, the facility utilization for larger events, for the K1. Oh, because BD and Bruce, which are more appropriate.
I think we just said, building utilization.
Okay.
I think we just leave it at that. I think we can. Okay, how about the cons? Well, I guess in comparison to Plan A, you're not grade banding until third grade. So in comparison to where we are, that we're not introducing kids from across the community, we are.
But if we, then are we not banding either until third grade? Because if you cohort, you're in a school, or no? And I'm asking to learn.
Okay, this is my opinion. I wouldn't say that it's like some sort of, my opinion is that grade banding is not, everybody tries to make it like, oh, because the kids are all together. I don't actually think that 150 kids are ever together, right? So let's be honest about that. For me, I see benefits with grade banding because it's the best utilization of resources, right? And there's opportunity to intentionally bring them together. So children are having the ability to access resources and other children and experiences. I don't look at grade banding as having the kids together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean,
and the cohort still allows them to have the same experiences in the same place with the same access to resources, right? So I think cohorts, like I will not vote on any sort of grade banding if I am not promised that there will be cohorts involved. Because kids need familiarity as they move about through the school system.
Are we cohorting now?
No. They have pods or something, but they change every year.
Right, but that's when we talked about circle, square, triangle.
Right. So like last year's pods had nothing to do with this year's pods. It's just more so like how they control lunch and who does what at what time.
Right, and I think that we have to be intentional,
Yeah,
right?
right.
I think if you were intentional, you'd see a different makeup cohort.
Yeah, and I also think you want to be careful that you're not making mini pods.
Exactly.
You want it to be sizable.
Well, if you have 7 sections, right, it's 3 and 4. So
Exactly.
you're gonna have your circles and your squares.
Yeah.
Next year, your purple circles and your green circles are gonna be together, but your orange and whatever are gonna be together.
Right.
And the following year, you do the opposite. So that way they all get to know each other. But as you transition into third, they become a huge triangle,
right.
a hexagon.
At some point, you don't cohort anymore, right? Like at some point,
Right, when you hit after third grade, because you're all together, that's when because you're gonna have a huge mix, right?
Right.
You're bringing this school and this school together. It's kind of like middle school and third grade, when we brought them all together.
Wouldn't you think, because I spoke with community members about this, if you were in Plan B and you were coming from 2 second grades to 1 third grade, you would allow them to stay in those cohorts for familiarity and adjustment, and then 4th grade maybe start to.
You think about it that way, or would you take your triangles and maybe half your triangles go with half your circles and vice versa?
Okay.
And then you make
I don't
your
know
mix your colors,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
That makes
Because
the most sense to me.
correct, because it
Otherwise, what's
allows,
the point in having to?
right,
Correct.
right, because at that point, then everybody will know each other.
And if you just mix them up, then you're losing all the familiarity that you just
Correct.
spent several years building.
Yes,
That's
you have to be
the way that makes the
intentional.
most sense to me.
About that.
Isn't that kind of like having community schools, but not having community schools?
Yeah,
And
just
it's not
from-
a
just
square-
up from your
Not
community.
your, I mean,
not from your neighborhood necessarily.
but at the same point, when they get off the bus in the morning, they're not just with their cohort, they're with everyone. So I might see you, like, I'll be somewhat familiar with you. Maybe I play with you on the playground for the 20 minutes in the morning. So I know who you are. So maybe you're not in my cohort for the classing, like for that classroom. But then maybe next year when they mix, you are, I'll be like, oh, I remember I played with you on the playground when we got off the bus. So it's not like you're a complete stranger and I've never seen you before. You'll know them somewhat, maybe not as much as you would from someone who is in your classroom, but you'll be exposed to everyone in some way.
We will, either in whatever model we're in, if we cohort, will we be able to get the cohort to lunch together and recess together?
Well, that would be the whole point of that.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So your circle team would be in lunch together, while your square team, triangle team is out and they,
That could be like 80 kids.
how do you like that? I'm never gonna be able to live this down, am I? Making
A
fun of
John Madden board.
me. There you go.
So like, I know FGL can do that. But in Plan G, at First Woods, you should, we're not there yet, but whatever. You can, I don't know if can you fit?
Oh, why
Maybe,
not?
yes, you can, because right now, let's be honest, right now, the lunches are.
Yeah, but they're not using that. They're not using the risers.
They don't use the risers.
They only use the front row and the risers. There's
We
only
have
Right.
258 people in here.
Huh?
258 people.
Yeah, and we're,
What can you feed them?
Well, that's what we asked Mike to ask Claire about.
Yes. I'm looking at my notes.
She must be able to, she did it at FGL. It was about 70, 80 kids.
there was 90 plus kids there at a time. In a grand level.
Well, but yeah, but her cafeteria there may have been bigger. I'm
There's
trying,
still only one walk, there's still only one walk through.
one serving area.
So did we say that in Plan B, you cannot grow pre-K because you don't have the
It
space?
sounds like it can a little bit, we might, but we have to find out if the collaborator would split. Yeah, so we have a couple unanswered questions on UPK there. What other cons do we have? So we can keep going.
For Plan
B.
The cost it might be to replicate things, it's just two different.
Somebody did that. Somebody did.
So, you mean special, this cost of special ed or? would
No, I
it be-
just think cost of like programs, if we're trying to be equitable. And then if we're going through, then we can go back to our special education now as well. Are we replicating our special ed classes for kindergarten on both sides?
And you are, remember, we talked
But then
about that.
what's the cost of that?
Well, I wouldn't worry as much about the cost, because I think I had figured it out. But what I would say to you is that our 8s and our 6s, our ABC classes, and our 12s, we have to be in 2 different buildings. Because if not, you're overwhelming the building, the amount of students,
And
right?
then we're not giving everybody closest to home.
Correct. And if someone in the 812 could transition in.
No, I,
No,
yes.
ICT, yes. So it's
But
only
what,
12.
but what if more of the ICT kids are coming from one side of town?
We'd be accommodating.
We'll figure it out.
2 classes there and
We accommodate.
It's gonna work out. It may not be like the best the first year, but the teachers and I will sit down and figure it out. But the one thing I'll say is the concern that I have, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but when your 8s are ready to transition, because they don't always stay in an 8 or a 6, they would have to go to the other school for a 12, because they go from 6 to 8 to 12.
But just going back to, just going back to ICT though, for a moment. So then let's say if one side of town, let's say Furnace Woods. You have so many students that need ICT in one grade that now you have to split.
Yep.
From there, but the other side of town at BV, you don't have as many. Is that the best utilization of your special ed teachers?
So what I would do is a couple different things, because Erica had asked me a question about reduction of special ed staff. I said, I don't know where they're hearing it. That was part of one pro in something that we had shared. I said, but it wouldn't really be a reduction. We would just repurpose them. I have 2 sections at every grade level. I don't need 2 sections right now at every grade level. So we would just take resources and put them where they are.
I think ICT will be totally fine, yes.
It's the ABC and the 12.
Anomalies though, of like a year where one school needs 2 sections and another school still needs 1. So instead of
You would move
2
someone over.
sections, but now you're,
No, a teacher.
You'd move a teacher.
but every other, we still need 2. I need 1 on each side
Yep,
for every grade.
yep.
But then because of this class, we would need to hire a new one because this school needs 2,
No.
this school needs 1.
So if we
did
go
this,
to
we
this,
did this. We did this last year.
I know,
Where are
yeah.
visual?
We did.
I don't have it off the top of my head, Erica. It's somewhere. I'll find it.
In all honesty, you have to see it. So, because Jen and I last year, I think it was right around the time we were going to vote. We had seen very similar concerns. And I think we actually projected it out a few years. We actually went with Lisa. We were on the phone with her for about an hour and a half.
Mhm.
And Jen and I went through
Each grade.
each grade for like projected for 3 years about where we would be, and we were good. There was one where we needed a skills and an ICT
At one building.
at one building, and we had an extra teacher.
Yeah, that's how we're gonna do it.
There
So,
was a teacher with the 12-1-1 group,
correct.
right?
Yep.
She was gonna utilize that 12-1-1 teacher to be the person with those kids in ICT skills.
Yeah, one of them.
The concern, that was a priority. That's a priority.
I think we are committed, we have to say, we are committed to having ICT available at each.
Yeah, I just want to make sure no one's getting shortchanged or they're an afterthought and, oh, sorry, we don't have room for you here.
Do you think I would let that happen?
I mean, it's definitely a concern.
Yeah, I just don't want that to happen.
No,
to
it's
our
definitely a
students.
concern. So
I will say that if we go to a model like B, we would only need 2 12-1-1s, 12-1-2s. So what we would do is that teacher would be repurposed for that overflow. I will be totally honest, and I shared this with Mr. Trombley, is that we have 12 brand new referrals. 3 to 5.
For what? I'm sorry.
They're referrals to special education.
for 3 to 5.
That's
3, 4, 5.
That's just my concern,
Right. But we
is
can't,
that our numbers can grow.
they can always grow. We will
Always
figure
grow.
it out internally, but the thing that I get concerned about is that we have so many referrals, I can't project that far ahead. I can say, find 3 new kids in each grade, I would say, and we could figure that out. I do know there's possible retirement in special ed this year, which then helps us that way too. So there's a lot of different things that are gonna happen. We just need to know what plan and we'll build it. You tell us and we'll build it, they'll come.
Commit ourselves to like what we want it to be.
This is one of the pros of having, this is a pro of having 3, 4, 5 together. Well, I guess it's not a threat. I'll say it's not as much of a threat because you have 3, 4, 5 together, you have a lot of kids classified at that time, right? So we went through this last year. We actually never got to have this conversation fully in public, to be honest, because we didn't get this far. But it was an absolute priority of the board. Jen and I
actually broke it out by
spent a lot of
kids.
time.
I
Yes.
said, this many kids would be in this school, this many kids would be in this school, and then we figured out where the teachers were, where the related service people were. I have to find it now.
Yeah,
That you
I
said
look
that.
forward
Who
to
does how many 811 kids, like that were ours versus,
Yep. I had tuition versus none,
yeah.
you know.
Look at all that.
Jen, do you remember in our World Cafe, when there was the parent about the ABC student in the
Yes.
plan that we have now, and she was commenting what was wrong?
So this year when we moved an ABC class, we removed an ABC class from BV. Comment was, well, now you have a student at Furnace Wood that aren't necessarily with their grade.
Age, their peers, yes, I spoke to her too.
Okay.
So, we did that, and I shared with you why, was we needed to have more than one cohort in a building. When you have the 2 cohorts, it makes it so much easier to do integrated lessons, you have a colleague to banter with. So that's, and she and I spoke, and I said, I hear what you're saying, I said, but either way, next year, it won't be an issue.
So speaking on that, so is an ABC what is the best banding model for ABC? Is it 2 years, 3 years, or?
I would say ABC is easier for 3 years.
Okay.
12-1-2, it depends. K-1-2 is fine. 3 is okay. When you put 4 and 5 with 3, it sometimes makes it a little messy because the curriculums are so different.
Gotcha.
So we've had a lot of conversations about that. We've talked about how do we keep 3? Well, we don't have enough kids for just a cohort of 3. We don't have enough kids for a cohort of 4 or 5. So it might have to become like a team teaching kind of situation.
And so sorry, another one. So do you ever have a 5th grader now in an ABC program at the middle school? Like is there any, like, cause sometimes it's hard because they don't necessarily move with their year.
Correct. So remember, most of our ABC students are not graded.
Yeah.
So they don't follow a grade. They follow an age. You have to stay within 36 months or you write a variance. So at this moment, all of our kids are in 36 months. So does that mean I have a grade level at the middle school that I could have it here? The answer is yes.
Okay.
But that was by request of the parent.
Okay, so I think that's important for people to know that there's some allowable tolerance or appropriate tolerance for.
So we have to do 3 years no matter what, 36 months. There are times that you can get away with 39 months, and I write a variance to the state and I say, listen, this is the most appropriate, this is why we need to do it, and we usually get our variances approved.
So a third grader could in theory go to sixth grade for an ABC program because it's within 36 months.
You gotta look at the birth dates, and chronologically, I wouldn't let that happen,
No, I
but
get it. I'm just asking,
chronologically,
like, that's
you gotta
the
do the
extreme,
math,
right?
yeah.
That's extreme to me, but I just wanted to ask because
Yep.
I was just that surprising that that's such a tolerance.
You really have to look at the chronological age, you actually do the month, the year, and the date,
Oh, wow. Okay.
so I go right down to the number, I pull up a calculator and figure it out.
Well, you could also do the other way, so like a 6th or 7th grader being
Yeah.
elementary school.
Like, I guess another one of the cons for Plan B was the demographics between the two teams. Something that, you know, if we have to be cognizant of the fact that we don't want to create I don't think we want to create a Title I school. So that's something that we have to think about. And would there be services that we would have to add at one school to support a population different than another elementary school? And what would that cost?
I'm gonna say, because this is something that's really true to my heart, that you have to pay for those services no matter what plan you're in. Because what we did is we took them away and we dispersed all the kids. And I think that they need to go back.
Well, I don't know if we ever had it. It's exactly.
Well, you're right, because some
I
parents
mean,
actually.
I'm not sure.
You
I'm not
wanna
sure.
know what? Actually,
We need to.
I know there was the Title I oversee group that used to follow the kids. And we talked about last year that when we disbanded, and Dennis was clear that that group no longer exists.
What group?
Well, we'll have to go back and watch the tapes, that there were students that were being monitored because you are a Title I school.
It's because we
A
had,
targeted school.
right, we were a targeted school based on
Oh,
testing.
That's
Right?
a whole different issue. It had
That's
nothing to do with
totally
Title
different.
I.
I still think that there, no matter what model you're in, there are services that need to go
But you
in
have to
there.
realize, you get Title I because how you get the money and how you spend it are not necessarily the same kids. And this
That's
is
right,
something that it makes zero sense. Zero sense, but you
She's right,
receive
she's
it
very
based on
confusing.
need, you provide it,
You
how do
receive
you-
it based on demographic.
but you provide it.
Utilize it based on the need of the student. So a student who is not going to be a student who gives you this qualification or these dollars could be a recipient of those dollars
Or vice versa.
and vice versa. The kid
So
who-
it's usually, the way it's usually looked at is based on socioeconomics. So they look at, we used to think free and reduced lunch. There's a much more complicated formula, especially since the 2020 census. That's why a lot of people's numbers changed. But that gives you the money. The money can only be used for kids that are at risk. That might not be that same student. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. So when you have a title school, whatever money is allocated is used for any student because you've breached a poverty line and the state says, this is now school-wide. You can take your money and you can apply it to anybody. When you have a targeted school, you can only use it for at-risk. Now, at-risk can be both academically, socially, attendance issues, all of that, all applies. And again, I know it was confusing, but we didn't lose money because we dispersed the kids. The money follows the student. What we did lose was a Title I school because now if you look at our numbers, we're pretty much like 30, 35, 34.
What we did lose is our school in need of improvement,
Yes,
SIN.
yes.
And district in need of improvement, DINI.
Right.
Which means that we don't have an issue with testing right now.
Right.
Before, we were targeted for the Blacks and the students with disabilities.
Yes.
And mind you, they were going off on students that were
Years ago.
9th and 10th graders because they needed to get a certain number in a cohort.
So
that was
our
the
test scores should show then that that minority group has actually excelled. They have gone up, right?
No, well, here's what happened. We lost the oversight because we changed our organizational structure. So what would then happen going forward, if we stayed, and likely we will not, stay in the organizational structure we're in, those kids would begin to be looked at again. not the same kids, but you're back, that's ESSA, so it doesn't matter. All that happened to us was because we disbanded schools and spread kids apart. The cluster that was at BV is no longer there. They're in 3 different schools now. So it wasn't, that was what they were saying to us. You have too many kids in one school that are failing in this.
Now that they're not in one school, because Amelia,
They're in
you.
10th grade, they're in
So-
10th grade.
Yeah, but I'm going
They
by.
are.
What are we doing, what are we doing for them in 10th grade?
They're seniors.
Wait a minute, I mean.
I'm saying if
still
you,
here.
you follow the same logic,
So
that
But the,
you could provide services all in that one location, but now they're in 3 different schools, you would have to provide services in
but
3
they
different.
are getting services.
And remember, they're not
Yeah, we
always the
didn't do
same.
anything to AIS.
You actually made it better.
Another thing to remember is
Didn't they make it
when you went specifically for title grant funds, title I grant funds.
Oh, sorry, but didn't we adjust the number of years you were had to be behind? before you
No, that's
qualified
not
for
us, that's
AIS?
the state. So
The
what,
2-year that 2 year is not we can't say we're gonna provide AIS if you're 1 year behind?
No, there
We're
are
not
kids who are
allowed.
6 months behind right now that are in AIS.
I thought you said that the school district policy was you had to be more than a year.
I
behind.
never said that. You said that I said that, but I never said that. And if you look at the entry criteria, that doesn't say it either. So I don't know
when does the
where
kid-
that came from.
I heard it at a board meeting, so
I heard it out of a
and
meeting
it
too.
wasn't corrected at the same board meeting, so I would assume it to be true. Thank you for correcting it
No,
now.
that is not
because
how
I
the
was-
entry criteria works. There are literally kids in AIS reading who are 6 months or more below grade level.
And that's
That's not my
every
experience.
3 times a year.
Right.
Every time we
I
do a
guess-
benchmark, fall
They're
winter, spring,
reevaluated.
we reevaluate who falling below so they can get AI certified.
That didn't change. The same number of teachers we had were just divided across the 3 schools. We have 2 reading teachers in each school. They have 2 reading, they have 1 math teacher.
the other thing
All
I'll
that
say,
remains the
Stephanie,
same.
that you said,
I actually remember these, so where I got it from. When I went through this with my own child, I got it from how he didn't qualify for services, and that comment was made to me.
Yes, and if I remember correctly, you heard it at the middle school.
Yes,
one thing that I'll say to you, Stephanie, that's really important, I'm sorry, Erica, is that when we had the two schools, BV had that concentrated there. Their population was much different than, because you keep saying, well, we've spread it out. You're right. So now it's equal, right? It's not just these kids in this school. They are across the board. So what does that trend look like? That's what we need to see now.
So in effect, and we're gonna, I don't know, talk about it tonight.
We'll get by midnight.
We have a new, we will look at the baseline. But yes, we should get back to.
I have a comment about the con. It's piggybacking off this, because I see it a little differently than you see it. If we're in Plan B, the con of this is we have to provide more. So if we see that one of the schools is struggling over the other, then the parents at the other school have to be okay with the fact that the school, we'll call it BV, needs more ENL, needs more AIS, math and reading, might need more coaching, might be smaller class sizes. Like there are costs there. Like we have to, because you have more ENL students. I don't know if you have more AIS students, we don't have that information,
Right.
but it's something to think about. There will be money tied to that. If we really care about giving everyone an equitable experience, then that is gonna have to be tied to that. That doesn't mean Furnace Wood doesn't get it to what they need, but we have to assume that with the socioeconomic difference here of 17 to 31, that there is gonna be some type of
And that's the thing, right?
need.
We can probably go back to having one of those buildings back to being a Title I.
No, it won't, so it could eventually, so I thought about this today. It's at 31% now. Every year we seem to fluctuate up, a trend around 2%, right? 2 or 3%. That means the other school can likely increase as well. So it'll be even now, but it is potential that BV could become a Title I school in the next few years.
Just to know, there are different ways a district can identify its Title I attendance zones. So there's ways that you can identify how you're going to do that. It's not necessarily one school. A key note to this is no matter what we do with title funds, we have to philosophically and programmatically supplement, not supplant. Meaning that you have to be providing these services for the students anyway. You're just enhancing them through the use of those funds. So that's a philosophical approach with the use of those funds and a mandate.
And so a question on that, with Eric, I think I'm asking this because you said parents would have to be okay giving one building more than the other, but I don't think that's the case. I think parents have to understand you're going to give students what they need regardless of what building they're in.
Okay, so, right,
That has to be just
so I hear you.
as a district, but hold on one second. I'm saying as a district philosophy, it has to come down to, we have to give students what they need no matter what building they're in. And if that means we need to spend more money on the 4-5 building, if we stay in Plan A, the people in the K1 building shouldn't be upset about that. Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be about buildings, it should be about, you need to give kids what they need to learn. And I know you agree with that.
We all, I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate.
Yeah.
We
10th
all
man, you can
believe,
thank Ally.
we can all believe that, so we can all believe that. I'm not always gonna be sitting here.
Yeah.
I came from the community school model where it was constantly competition amongst the 3 schools, it was just how it always was.
Yeah.
So we put these a lot of what we hear is, if we make these 2 buildings, we're gonna have the same thing happen again. We're gonna divide the community, which is a con, and we're gonna cause the same thing where we're in competition with one another, where one school has to get this and the other school has to get that, but where the group of us sitting right here feel that children should get what they need and we have to go give them what is necessary for them to learn. But that has to be the philosophy that continues on if you pick something like this.
Well, I think that no matter what plan we decide, our administration has to carry the every kid gets what they need message on every PTA call versus the opportunity for some of those calls to carry different messaging, which allowed for some of this confusion on what building gets more or less. I think that we have the opportunity now for equal messaging across the board.
I hope so. I mean, but this is
Any
where,
building,
but
right?
this is with anything, yes, but this is where the conversation goes with this. So, and I don't know, we don't have a really good history here of giving one building what they need versus the other building, right? So we have to say
Yes.
that is a potential cost, right? There's a potential cost there. We don't know what that cost is. Which I don't know how you would even plan for that unless you know the really demographics and the breakout of AIS, special education, and ENL.
So we have to divide the district and probably do redistricting every year in order to accommodate whatever fluctuations in enrollments.
The unfortunate part of that is the Title VI limits you on distance, you have to be equidistant. I think you have to do it every year, but I mean, we haven't done it here in like 30 years.
But then we're gonna have what we talked about, which would be the equitable class sizes, right?
Oh, yeah, there will be no way.
Varying amounts of population on each side.
There will be no way to say the schools are gonna have same class sizes.
It's not, because if you look at this, I think one was 215, can't find.
And you're gonna have classrooms with kids who are more, the socioeconomic needs
They could potentially
are
have
gonna be
money.
in classrooms that are bigger.
I
that's
also,
amazing.
another con is we know of right now that we need an additional teacher in this plan, so that's a cost.
Yeah, we need at least one.
We need at least one for this one.
So there, I mean, I know we
Just to
don't have
follow up,
words
we
spelled out
can't
here, but
make
there
up
are
platforms
costs.
socioeconomic. So the same thing could happen. We are going to have all of the classrooms at the largest size, and you cannot distribute children on a classroom basis by socioeconomic factor. So
We can't, no.
So what we have currently is a promise that you will always have as close to cap as that grade can get, and no control over what the classroom makeup looks like for some of the groups that may or may not need the most support, because you can't choose socioeconomic as a factor or a filter when placing children. So what you don't have any control over that in any of the plans now.
Yeah, but I think, well, yes, I don't think you go in there and say, this person is this, and let's.
You can't use it at all.
Correct, but they do build classrooms based on trying to have,
Gender, ability.
right, you're trying to
But
build,
not that.
but that, right,
But
exactly.
when you have the whole grade together, it's a non-issue.
Correct.
We're done.
You're going into plan B,
You're
knowing
perfectly
you have
right
children that have
Every classroom has the same.
Not classroom, grade.
Great.
Yeah, but I don't think that but the classroom is where the kids are learning. So
but
if
it
we're
does-
talking about class
It
building
does,
to
it did
building.
matter when you had a K-5 model, and it will rear its head again with two K-2.
It's something that has to be managed. It will have to be continuously managed.
I mean, as Erica has said.
But it has
if
to
you
be
go-
managed
if you
even no matter
choose-
what plan you're in, because the kids are the kids and they need support. And they're always gonna be.
I think it's harder, it's just harder
Yes.
when your pool is smaller. You have more
Not
needs.
easier.
No.
It's
I
hard
just
when
think
you're
also
having
intentionally
unit
looking for
grades
those
in two
things
different
within the classroom, right? It's like, right now, we just have a group of kids together getting to know each other. Nobody understands what they have or who they are or their backgrounds. They're just learning about each other in the classroom. So I think when you go to a K-2 school in two separate parts of town, I mean, the demographics alone show you what the makeup of the schools are gonna look like. And that exposure, which they are gonna get in life in general, right, is never gonna be seen in those schools for K-2, the entire time they're there.
So for me, through everything that I've been through for the last year, it has nothing to do with children judging other children when they're 5, 6, 7 years old. It's about the supports that child gets, right? So if you're from a low-income family, perhaps your parents are working 24/7 and they're not as involved in your education and they can't show up or they can't support you with homework. And it's the whole picture. It's not so much about what house I live in and where, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The size of the house. So I don't worry about it in that regard. I think it has more to do with the child and what they need when they are in school.
Right, so I think we have to just say this con that we talked about for a long time, there's a potential cost. Right?
Well, and there's potential,
I have that already written down.
I think there is potential, sorry, I just lost that. Not the cost, potential differences. Right? There's potential differences. Good and bad.
And again, I hate to bring it up again, but the new developments that are becoming here soon, if we go to this plan B, B is overwhelmingly gonna be overcrowded with whatever population comes out of those developments as opposed to Furnace Woods.
I have two comments. One, I just wanted to make that being in a diverse environment doesn't automatically develop that confidence. You need intention and you need to promote understanding and empathy. And I think we do a pretty good job with that with our SEL program. I also want to say that I think we all need to change our mindset of, in education, it was always about equality. And now we've switched to equity. And you just said that if we were in this model, Plan B, that people would have to be okay with smaller class sizes at Furnace Woods. And then on the flip side of that, we're talking about, but look at this, there's ours already smaller class sizes. So, I mean, I think that all together, we have to be very mindful and purposeful about giving every student and family, if we can, what they need to be successful. And I did worry about those developments. So I looked up when Round Top was put in place, it was in 2013. You had 92, half 1 bedroom, half 2 bedroom. Your enrollment from 2013, if we go back to this chart, you actually decreased in enrollment.
Yes.
After Round Top was put in.
Yeah, there's like no kids.
So there's like no kids there. So you had a 92 unit and you saw a decrease in enrollment.
Was there a spike then a decrease?
So if we go back to your
Was there a spike
projections.
at Frankie?
Back then, I remember going with Dan to meet the developer. I remember that our projections were no more than 7 kids because it was a 1 and 2 bedroom apartment. The idea was that there were going to be very few kids since the beginning because we were very worried that will bring a lot of people when we just failed one bomb and we were not going to have the space in Angeline C or in in the elementary school. But since the beginning, they told us, because of the type of development, very few kids. And actually, I remember there were like 12 at the beginning.
So there was 12 in the beginning. We, at one point at Frankie, there was somewhere in the 20s. But that was K-5. So they were spread across, and then they aged out into middle school and high school. And I think right now I think Carmen and I looked up, there's 2. Are there 2 students?
At Mount Top?
Yeah.
I think it might be something like that.
So-
There's something.
And the round top is actually affordable housing unit.
I know.
So I believe your new
I got my
development
address, whatever.
is not affordable housing.
So I have addresses here.
I know a certain, actually, that's not true. A certain quantity of those units have to be affordable, like they have to have, but it's a low number, not like rent. So I think the rents are gonna be extremely high there.
But you're gonna have 2 and 3 bedrooms, and they're saying that they're projecting 9 children over there, so.
Yeah, but how many 3 bedrooms? I thought, Jeremy, do you know?
There's no 3 they're not
Nope.
actually 3 bedrooms, they're like, they have open den.
So I'm just saying that market rate rent, if you're gonna pay $3,500 for that, why wouldn't you go and someplace that would give you a bigger apartment?
But if you have a 2 or 3 bedroom, there's not gonna be kids in there?
It's not a 3 bedroom, it's a 2 bedroom, and I believe it's office.
They had
space.
52 to 3 bedrooms, 51 bedrooms, and then there was 50 just.
Yeah, but it's not, they're not, yeah, but the paperwork I did from the tenant, there's not a lot of that.
It's also a demographic component because it's gonna have a pool. It's a luxury property that you're gonna not find most families that are gonna move into. You'll have some, but I think that the idea, and I think it's similar, and we can actually look this up. I don't have the details in front of me, but if I recall, it's the same builder that built the Avalon property on North Island in Ossining, which is a larger property, and I believe they only added in that makeup of units, which is comparable to this. Let's call it, that might have been 190 and we're at 150, but I think there was not a large number of children that were going to the Ossining School District as a result of that development. And this will be on par in terms of amenities offered. It's not going to be just a standard apartment complex. That one is going to be targeted for a different demographics.
I guess my worry is just looking at our enrollment data that's given to us in 2022 to 23, we added 36 students.
K-12.
K-12, right now. But that's what I'm saying, like, that's without the development.
Not
And we're in
anymore.
10th grade. and
Wait, do we
10th
have 36 kids because it's UPK 12?
What?
I will tell you right now, I was in the high school this
They were high
morning. They have enrolled 50 new students this year as of today.
Wait, what? The enrollment is at the high school is what's numbers is what's increasing more than at the K-5.
Yeah, but
Why need
if you look at it, just on the enrollment by grade from 22, we added 10 in the 2nd grade and we added 38 in the 3rd grade. Right? It's on here.
Growing.
We were plus 38 in the 3rd grade. We went from 130
No, we
and
went, no. Wait, show me this because I don't read it anyway.
Well, one year, I think the year you're talking about, I had 38 new special ed kids move in.
oh, so, okay, so it's right here. So here by grade, 3rd grade was 130, 2023, and then 2024, it was 160.
So is that your special ed kids?
It could be, but one year, I don't know what year it is off the top of my head, it was after COVID. We had like 35 special ed kids move in. But I'm saying in the high school right now, we had 50 new students enrolled. I was just talking to the nurse this morning.
I feel like we should move on to G because it's 10 o'clock. And I'm so. All right.
One point that I forgot, that I think it's not that you forgot, but probably you didn't know, when there were neighborhood schools, we had to put a lot more money for arts and education in DB and the Purna Foods, because the PTAs in Purna Foods were able to raise a lot more money.
That's not how we did it.
That's
Wait a second.
Wait a second, we had $10,000 each, we had the same amount of money. Each of our elementary schools, yes, we had the same amount of money. One year, we decided, we lobbied, the PTA lobbied and lobbied and lobbied, and we finally got it to go per student. So Frankie Lindsay got 14,000.
Yes,
BB got
and
11,000.
that was a result of what I'm saying.
Yes. But it was
I
based
agree
on
with you.
children, not, it was based on the number of children.
No. Well, based on the number of children, if you remember, Erica, at the beginning, it was, when I came here, it was even, I'm from the woods and I spent $30,000
They did.
on BOCES, and BOCES gives us back 40%. They started the following year with 12,000 compared to BB that only spent 10. And that's when we said, you can forget about that. We're going to give you money by the student.
No, because it
And
impacted,
still-
it impacted the experience of the students.
Exactly,
Significant.
and still, I always gave a lot more money to BB.
Okay.
So in that sense, I can tell you,
So we didn't know that at Frankie Lindsay when we were,
also Franchi
struggling
Leagues,
over
also
there.
Franchi Leagues.
All right, so let's start with pros and cons of the pros of G.
Can we use some of the same grading here?
Yep, we don't, yeah.
so I'm actually gonna start
Let's-
with, we have more students together. So more students together from kindergarten. So there's more.
Yeah, let's try not to repeat.
So that's not a
any-
repeat, that's new.
Let's try to not repeat any grade banding pros that we've already touched on in A, because we're all aware that Plan G is A with
More kids together.
3 years and 3 years instead of 2, 2, 2.
It does get rid of one of the transitions from our current year plan. It also allows the most opportunity for growth for our UPK.
I'm sorry, what was it?
I said, Erica said that it brings more students together.
Okay.
I said it was one less transition from our current plan, and I said it has the most growth opportunity for our UPK.
I also like that we would be transporting to 2 schools instead of 3.
There's a potential savings in busing.
And they could be on the same schedule, bell times. Not having the third and the different.
Oh, that's a good point. If they can make that busing work, that's a good point. I don't know if there's, the issue would be, you now have many more kids to go to 2 buildings.
Sure.
So you may not have enough inventory or drivers to make that work, but.
I think that
100%.
would be
That's a real
something,
opportunity.
yeah, where we can start to be creative again with our middle and high school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Bell time.
bell times for them would also have to be looked at to accommodate this.
We can't get those ones. So that's the detail. Okay. Another pro, that we didn't, I don't think we talked about that in this model, is, because a parent mentioned the other day about the student leaders model, a student model. Adding that extra grade. Yeah, gives you more potential with them.
Yeah.
Any 3-year.
In any 3-year group.
Yeah, any 3
B
year.
and G, that's right.
That was a good one. I really like that.
I don't know if this is just my interpretation, but I think this is a great compromise to the plans that have been on the table.
I also think that, and I don't know if someone will nap it for me, but I think Furnace Woods is not too far from everyone.
100%.
Where right now, I feel for those who maybe live on one side of town and have to go all the way to BB, even FGL can be far for people.
Or they have to go to BB and then get dropped off at FGL after.
Correct.
Yeah.
But in the morning, we're gonna have kids from Brooklyn having to come over here too.
It's not farther than, I think it's getting from the outskirts of Verplank to here, I think is 12 minutes.
I will say there's more people, but there's more kids over there. So I think it's easier, I mean, to bump.
I mean, we should probably get a study for that.
No, I know, what Jen was saying though is that it's it's a denser population on that side, so you can do an express bus.
Absolutely.
Where,
Your
when it,
windshield time is less,
So
yeah,
you're,
you're not stopping.
as far apart.
Yeah.
so right now,
Stop and go.
for someone who lives in Portland Estates, there may only be 2 kids and the next development is kind of far away. So in order to maximize their bus, they're on the bus longer because the kids are more spread out.
This 3 years in one place in G, not B, but G gives you vertical and horizontal
With
collaboration.
more teachers. So I think it's a pro having more staff together. I think that it will help build efficiency among staffing. I think it give a greater opportunity for kids to meet each other, actually. Having more children in the building is another pro.
Even with pods, we can get
Even with
creative
pods,
with
yeah.
maybe specials and lunch and stuff. We talked about that.
I have another pro, but saying it's also gonna be a pro for B. Putting 3 to 5 together puts our testing grades together.
Right, which can give us a focus on the technology needed and the curriculum needed there. Yeah.
And if we do, in any of these models with cohorting, I think we're gonna increase the likelihood of teacher collaboration, because it's easier to group these miniature schools right inside the building, so that we can better plan, so teachers have the opportunity to share, work together and collaborate.
There's also more staff in the building, right? So you, like right now, we know there's a struggle at BV because there's a lot of teaching aides and teaching assistants at Francie Lindsay for our kindergarten or first graders. But if we retained that staff, we could provide the second grade teachers with some type of coverage.
Yeah, more sharing.
More sharing of staff.
Yep, sharing.
More coverage and more sharing of staff.
Well, right, because we added more TAs at Frank G because of second floor bathrooms, where we could rethink that and just provide more TAs
To second grade.
universally.
Yeah, universally.
Universally. If that's something we did.
If we're intentional in our planning, I think a lot can happen when we're less spread out.
And I think a pro of this plan is if needed, it could save us money. It could. I don't think that's why any of us are having this conversation right now. I don't think any of us came into this conversation with the idea or thought that we were doing this to save money. The intention was to make this better for our families and our students, and to get better academic outcomes in the long run, was for me. So don't think that was an intention of ours, but I think that what we're gonna find when we start having the next further discussion is that this plan actually, a pro of it is that it could potentially save us in the long run. Or the short run, on staffing.
I would say that an intention of mine is to save money. I mean, I am definitely worried about educational outcomes and giving every kid what they need to be successful, but I am definitely have an eye on the
We
cost.
don't have an eye on it, but I don't think we came into this with the thought that we were gonna do this different plan to save us money.
That's a fair statement. I also think a pro would be that we know we need more administration office space. And we've looked at ways to increase that.
Yeah.
So we know that was gonna be a cost for us anyway.
So if we stayed, and this goes back to what we didn't discuss, if we stay in plan A, or we move to plan D, we have to move our technology department out of the basement at French and for growth.
You kick that again.
Well, I think some people would like that to happen no matter what.
Yes.
Even, right, not just because.
We need to talk about it.
Yeah, I think to be completely transparent is that we were looking at other options that potentially could have cost the district a lot of money.
Right. It could have cost a lot of money per year, trying to put the technology department in a more appropriate space. If we move to plan G, it gives them the space that would need, and don't quote me, I do not think there's a very large sum of money that would be needed to modify space for technology, because they are in classrooms now.
They'll modify
We're
their technology.
all the time. Used to it.
You can modify it with your technology.
I guess one thing we should think about is just the growth factor in G, right? So that's a con for me. The growth in furnace. Well, there's 0 classrooms to grow, so at FGL or no, Furnace Woods, there's 0 to grow, and then we would have to build, so that cost saving that we would save on the front end, we would end up spending if we get an enrollment first, and we have to accommodate these children, and we don't have the accommodations for them there. So that would be one of the costs.
So
But the savings would be ongoing, right?
the savings will be ongoing.
So.
I think while we're talking about space, Mr. Trombley was calling up for us. We did, not we, Margaret and Lisa, I'm not sure, Anita, all of you, all of them,
Didn't let me touch it.
did the work to put together. So the board wanted to know how much space in these plans, how many seats, that's right, seats, not space. How many seats are open? So right now we're talking about G, if you just scroll down. If you scroll down to plan G, it will show you that in K, we would have 7 sections, approximately 19 students in a classroom, cap is 22. That allows us to have 22 seats open, right? Because you take the difference between what we have and the policy, multiply it by the sections, and technically you could add 22 more students into kindergarten over what we've projected and not have to add an additional teacher and whole section. And then we did it for each first grade is you could add 8 more children before you get to class cap, 8 more in second grade, and then this is third, 9, 15, 25. I mean, there is, to say that there's not space in terms of seats, I think there's enough space in terms of seats, but if we're talking about physical space, that's a different thing.
I think
Future
the,
classrooms.
I think the space is for me, other than everyone having to move, because I think that is a con, right? The biggest con for me is the space. I think it's, you know, the risk. It's a risk, and he did not have this type of risk.
So,
He was not.
so in fairness, no, please.
Just for our families at home, if you're looking to where we found that, if you go onto our website under the elementary school restructuring, under the BOE meeting of 11/27, or the most recent date that's up there will be the most recent information. If you click on the room capacity and class size, that's where the document will be.
Hang on 1 second though, if you look at the other plans, it's kind of the same thing.
Well, they can have classrooms.
They can have classrooms at Frank.
So it's seats. But then.
But one of the things that I actually like, especially when doing our report today, is,
We're listening. Sorry.
oh, no,
I
you're,
wanna hear you.
anything.
I'm just. He's in trouble.
We were just looking to see how much, there's not tremendous, FPL always has space.
I was just gonna say, one of the things that was exciting to me doing the tour earlier was, we do have space that's not being fully utilized. And then if we were to go to, especially going to Plan G, we get to be creative with that space and do something different, like, to me, that's exciting.
Yeah, so let's be honest, right? How we're using some of the space now are not really ideal. So to say that we're spending money, but in reality,
That
some of
that anyway.
that should be looked like that corner where we have some support is not ideal in the current model. So it should be fixed. It should be fixed as part of a capital project, no matter what, when we reuse furnace boards. So to me, it's not sunk cost.
Right.
The other thing I like about G is that if the conversation ever resurfaced or the need arose where there was a need for really big expansion, G gives you the opportunity to very simply go to E down the road. I know that E is off the table. I'm not suggesting that we want to look at this in 2 years, but we're going to do reevaluations periodically to adjust our district more frequently than we have in the past. G provides an opportunity to very simply slide to E with very minimal disruption to students.
But that's the thing, right? If we're planning for future planning, right, we're saying we're gonna, if we say we're gonna do Plan G, we're also saying there might be a need to look into this again, to do another, right?
Maybe in 5 to 7 years, there's always gonna be, we're gonna be, so I think
I don't
we're
think
gonna be
anything
having
is
this
static.
we're gonna be having this conversation, no matter what we do, because it's at the forefront of all we're doing now. So we're always gonna be having this conversation about what's working, what's not working. Where are the cost savings? Where are the costs? Where are the extra expenses we didn't know we had? What does our curriculum look like? Is it working? I think this conversation taught us a lot of things we have to focus on. If we prioritize, if we're willing to take the risk because we've walked this building today, we know that there is potential space, okay? And we see that we're tracking across the board for a significant amount of time here, losing children every year. Yes, it's unpredictable in some ways, but if in 5 to 10 years, which in New York State, I think we have 14%, we're losing every year. But if we do have a growth and people are having less children, if we do have growth, at least we know that there is room. We cannot expand UPK at all if we stay in it.
I understand that, but I guess for me, the big picture, because I know we've been talking about the modules, and based on today, we can't do modules unless we're doing construction, right? So
He has to get back to us on that. He said SEG doesn't like to approve it unless they know you have a plan, right? That's kind of how I understood it. I think we need to get more specific on that, but we don't need them right now, right?
Okay.
Like, we don't need them right now. We fit in this model as is. And I don't know if we're looking at this right now. I mean, listen, it's hard to predict. It is. It's hard to predict. It is. So,
the other con for me
The
is
risk.
just also, you know, we just spent all this money on the cafeteria at BV, and it's only gonna be used for UPK and the outsourced people that are gonna be using it. And, you know, that was another issue. I mean, it was $1 million renovation that we did. And the kids of our district aren't, I mean, all of them aren't gonna be able to go through there. So that's just a con for me as well.
Yep, but I think our district's been struggling with having a PD space. So I think there's a use for that space. So yes, it's not for students in the cafeteria, well, but we've been struggling to have a space that we can bring teachers together, for PD, and that new area offers an opportunity.
I also think we have to be back to that creative mind of that vision. Like, what if we hosted an event there or something like it? We don't have to limit it to just being a cafeteria for lunch all the time. Like, it could be board meetings. We could have a dance there. Like, we can do events. We can use it. I think we really need to start thinking outside the box a lot more and just be open to a lot of new things.
Yeah, let the PTA use it. Why not?
Maybe it's a great use for that date night, dropping your child off for babysitting. It's a smaller space.
Looking at you.
No,
Lisa, you're probably entertainment. You're taking Lisa on the date.
you going shopping on your credit card?
I think another pro for Jake would be that the expansion of UPK is actually in the long run going to save this district money. And it's going to be what provides equity, because all research shows that students who attend UPK, low income, they perform better on tests, they require less special ed services. So you're gonna get money, long term on that investment.
Here's one of my questions I had, and I don't think I sent it along, but one of my questions was, we go ahead and we expand UPK and we have done it and we've outsourced it, right? Let's just say that this happens. The state decides that they need to make cuts, and that's one of the things that goes. What happens to us as a district not getting that income anymore, and what happens to that program?
So I thought about that. But I thought about that. I'm gonna speak this is how I think I would go. So our grant for the 113 students is $610,000. We are outsourcing to a program that we're giving them that money. If the state decides to take that funding away for whatever reason, we have to say, does Hendrick Hudson School District value UPK enough and the preservation of this, the long-term cost saving to spend out of pocket that $610,000
Out of our budget?
out of our budget?
Oh.
That would, but that would.
we just let parents pay 5,400?
We let parents pay some portion.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, our parents could pay a portion and then maybe we could even
Yes, that's right.
use it based on
It's
needs.
still here because it's not our staff. If we expand UPK with our own staff, we can absolutely not expand it, we cannot grow it, we can do not that, we can't. And that's enough, that's enough.
Actually, people need to know at home that you cannot have a 2 and 3 program. You can't have before and after care.
Right.
A provider gives you that.
And we need that.
But we need to check, I mean, I would think that why could charge tuition by still using our space, since I know districts that have daycare facilities that charge tuition. So, I mean, that's a question.
I will ask. Well, what I do know for sure is that they cannot charge our families anything unless they are accessing before or after school services.
What about like a?
I'm saying if the
program?
funding goes away completely.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we could be very hypothetical here. So yes, we'll look and see what will
If
happen.
yeah, please, if the funding does go away completely, I would say, my assumption, and we could fact check this, would be that if we want to preserve that program, we would just have to pay them to stay for an agreed upon amount of money. That would be our that would be the district.
It seems logical to me, Erica, that would be a pathway we could go down.
Right.
I would say probably politically, it's not likely to disappear.
I actually think it's gonna increase.
Right.
I
The
do.
Alexis was gonna ask about 3-year-olds.
I was gonna say, like, if you, and I'm not saying it's a priority, but if there was a need or desire to have a tuition-based threes program, would they consider doing that, and can we legally do that?
They are very interested in tuitioning out a 3-year-old program.
Good,
Yes.
awesome.
And
Which
Then,
also
then that might provide us with an opportunity to charge them a
For that
rental fee.
program.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it
that's
may-
great, because
Or before now.
we have preschools closing and people are not gonna have as many options.
It also means that, to put the concern raised by Tamika before to rest, if we give them 113 seats and we don't fill them all with our fours program, then we could let them offer it to threes.
You can't, it's not
No.
their money, it's.
No, not, but it's where.
Oh, you mean
no, no,
space-wise
no,
or
Forget the
space?
dollars. I'm just talking physically the
Oh,
seats.
space, yeah.
If we're saying these are your seats, first fill 4, and if you can't, then we want you to offer a threes program versus filling your fours program with outside students. I'm sure we could, I mean, it's private negotiation, right? So you could.
You have to charge them, Jeremy, because you don't want to give away the house for free.
Yeah,
Okay, we're talking about cons. Everyone, all the teachers move, there's gonna be children in this that move unnecessarily, some are moving anyway. There's a risk for space if we needed to expand or grow, we're a bit tight, we have to start planning for that. What other cons exist in moving from A to J?
I don't know, if the all teachers move though is isolated to just G.
No, it's an issue
It's
everywhere.
an issue everywhere, so I don't wanna just limit that. to
Say that
G.
again, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, the all teachers move you have as a con for G, that could potentially be a con for
Yes.
any of the
Yeah.
multiple options.
Mhm.
Right, because if we go to plan B, the teachers, some, maybe not all,
Right.
teachers will have to move though. And if we stay in A, you guys said you're going to reevaluate the building utilization, so we still might have teachers moving.
And
Okay.
students, right?
And students, so I just wanna make sure it's not just the con for A, that for G, that's a con for all.
Correct.
Well,
Yes.
we also still need to get all of the data for the building's flipping, you know.
and so I think another consideration may be to benefit teachers in G. It's the least likely that if there is an adjustment in sections from grade to grade, that it's less likely that a teacher would have to shift buildings.
Right.
So that's also a benefit in G that you don't have in the other two plans.
Especially for the teachers.
You benefit for the teachers. If there's an adjustment to grade level needs, you have a less likely requirement to leave the building if you're in currently. Yeah, because it'd be like, there's only 50-50 shot.
More sections and more.
And the other con is like hosting events with grade levels is gonna be difficult. We're gonna have to think outside the box on how to make that happen.
Thinking outside the box,
That's true.
not necessarily a con, just doing something different than we've been doing before.
Yeah, I like using threats and opportunities better than pros and cons.
Well, that's why I'm just saying, when we're talking about the cons, it just lets us get ahead of it, so I'm just, yeah, that is a con, but we can think differently.
I used the wrong vernacular. We can start over for the first time.
Rewind, let's do it all over again. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Can we go over the tax increases for the public, especially for the parents
Yes,
who are just tuning in now?
yes.
Is that also gonna be online so they can see it in board docs?
Yes,
So,
we will post,
Thank you.
post some.
and then in December, we're going to go over some financial, audits and more of that, and we'll actually go over the projections.
Okay.
Like, all of it. This is more just informative stuff tonight.
Okay.
But in December, our work session is gonna be around getting ready to build a budget, going over our financial due diligence that we've been doing, our audit, and how Enrique and Mr. Trombley are planning the finance committee to make improvements and what the community needs to start to expect.
As long as we go over it, I'm okay. Like.
So, thank you to the board for another thoughtful discussion. The cabinet providing good details to support that discussion. We do want to, as we've alluded to, talk about what happens after the decision, because we are in the business of serving the educational needs of students, and we are in the business of doing that in the most effective, cost-effective, and efficient way for our taxpayers. So we want to think about student outcomes and our financial forecast. As we mentioned earlier, we utilize the New York State testing program for one measure of how our students are achieving, and you can also use it for growth. We will be giving you a high level view of that right now, just the 3 through 8 testing program, because we're actually going to be just doing the 3 through 5 testing program because we are focused on an elementary discussion right now. Just the business rules, the 22-23 results are not available for the state average. We do have our local performance, but we do not have the comparable to the state average, which we wanted to show for proficiency levels. When you look at these items, whether it be a 3 through 8 or a 3 through 5 discussion on the testing program, when we say the word proficiency, that means a score of 3 or above. Just another business rule that's not on there if we need to. A score of 2 on the New York State testing program assessments does mean in the state's eyes that the student is on track to graduate. That is the definition of that. Regents, which we'll discuss at a later presentation, Dr. Weller and I will lead that. We will provide that at a later date. We are going to be focused on just 3 through 5 results. So when we take a look at a couple of testing program years, we have 22-23, we have our local data. We do not have state comparable data. Our 21-22 and 18-19, these are the years that the state says you can find like comparison to. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see which grade in terms of the ELA assessment it is. You'll look at the numbers of 3s and 4s because that's what we consider proficient. And in the previous years, you will see how our students did compared to the New York State percentage of those at what we call proficiency level. So as an example, if we take grade 3 math in the first row of data, in the 22-23 school year, we had 60% of our students in grade 3 at proficiency level. In 21-22, we had 67% of our students at proficiency level, which was higher than the state proficiency level, which was at 48%. And in the testing year 18-19, we had 68% at proficiency level with 55% compared to 55% at the state level. I'm not going to insult your intelligence and read the numbers to you, but in the color coding, you can see anywhere there is a green color code when compared to the state math or proficiency level, we outperform the state's proficiency level there. And again, this is in, I'm sorry, this is, did I just move it in math? Yes. Should be that. We also wanted to include the refusal rate Yellow means that we were below the state, proficient, or at or below.
And white, what is white?
White,
So yellow is
yellow is out, I'm sorry, yellow is,
It's a tie, white is below.
What is the refusal rate?
I have a question.
refusal rate is, students who did not take the assessment.
I have a question when it comes to the refusals.
Yes.
Are we noticing a trend on which students are refusing? And I think I learned here that the students that take your Algebra 1 Regents, if I'm correct, don't take the Math
Correct.
8.
And
So
likewise,
they're not
the living environment.
Okay.
So that's not here.
And then are we noticing a trend in, so, I don't know, I was just thinking of my school, I know we do offer the Math 8 state test to our Algebra 1 students, but they're usually the ones who opt out, so like, I know that's a trend.
Those
We
are
don't,
not
is there any,
opt out.
yeah, I know they're not opt-outs, but that's the trend I noticed for there. Do we notice the trends here or? Because I do notice there's an increase as you go up from 3rd grade to 8th grade.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you if there was or not. I mean, I'm sure it's possible for us to go into a demographic and look and see if we notice something. But yeah, we've not done that yet.
The one thing that, so middle school kids, I will say, only because I went through it and I have them, and that's when actually my kids ask me. They seem to be able to coerce their parents a little more easily.
I work in middle school.
Okay, but I will say that at Hen Hud, our 8th graders do not take the math. If they're in algebra, don't take the math at all. So I don't think they're considered an opt-out.
No.
They use it as a Regents review time, but they do take the ELA.
I can't say the screen good. Sure. So, sorry, my vision seems to be, inversely related to my grades, but, are we seeing that our, opt-out rate is on par with local districts? And then also, is it on par with the state, or are we having fewer opt-outs or more opt-outs?
There is a data file that shows state comparison, that are more detailed analysis, we can definitely provide that review for.
I look, if it's gonna take everybody.
No, there's a simple file, we just don't have.
Okay, thank you.
We'll do it, when we do a deeper dive, we can give you the more granular.
So that's the ELA, this is our 3 through 8 math results. Again, business rules, green is previous years, not 22, 23, because that data is not available. Green is a proficiency rate above the state average. White is below yellow, but there's not on this page would be a tie.
I'm just gonna ask one more question. I'm sorry, I know that this is not,
That's okay.
we're not analyzing. About how many students are taking the Algebra 1 Regents in the 8th grade?
Every year it's a different number. I think.
It's like, is there a ballpark, like around
It's
30,
usually like
50?
2 sections.
So about
that are
50 to
algebra
60, you would say?
Maybe,
approximately? Okay.
What do we attribute in some grades having decreasing in their ability? Like I'm looking at the scores. I mean, I'd actually like to know 2 things. What do you attribute the scores going down from the previous year? And my other question is to actually quantify this data. I would like to know, and I don't know if you even have access to this one, but I would like it to compare it to neighboring districts.
So, yes, and a while back, years and years ago, the state used to give you comparable districts and they stopped doing that. But we had to do it for a different reason. And I can't remember what it was.
So we can choose.
Yeah,
the
oh,
district.
you
We
can
have to-
too, right.
You'd have to, what I would recommend is that the board think about what are comparable districts. Not now, when you think about comparable districts,
Yeah.
you think about multiple measures, or
Right.
multiple metrics, size, demographic makeup,
Socioeconomic.
socioeconomic, all those types of demographics. Or those districts that you'd like to compare to, or we could do a more granular, which is the all district average within Rockland,
Yeah.
Westchester, and Putnam.
So that's a region.
I think I would like to make that, I think that makes the most sense to me. Compare us, start with, instead of us picking the school we want to be compared to, start with, how do we compare in our Westchester, Rockland?
Yeah. So they do, so the easy ones, because if they give it to you in the level 1 data, is your BOCES. So they start with your BOCES and then they widen it to your region. And you can look at that. And, or you can, and I don't remember why we had to go back and pick this, but we were doing something with BOCES, the 3 districts that looked like us. So I do have that, at the office, and we could certainly go that way as well.
So as we build that presentation out, we're anticipating the December meeting, correct?
Yeah.
We could build that out. Now, the one caveat I will share is we are waiting for the state to release to us this year's comparative results. So
yeah,
we'll talk to the board, and if we don't have that data before that presentation, we'll see if we want to postpone until we receive that data. But
we have the comp for both teams in region, but we don't have state comp yet.
This data actually concerns me because we're definitely not going in the right direction.
There's not a lot of growth.
There's not a lot of growth, and I would assume that we would be performing better, especially since we have the highest per pupil cost, one of the highest in Westchester, and our student teacher ratio is very low.
If you're, just remember when you're looking at this, you're missing 2 years in there, right? You're missing 1920 and 2021. Yeah, those are the COVID years. But when you're looking at this, you're getting a little, there's only a decrease from 4th grade to 5th grade the last 2 years. The other ones, you have an increase, and I'm not considering 8th grade because I'm assuming
it's impacted
50
by
of
the
those
algebra.
kids are now in algebra 1.
They're not taking it.
And they're not taking it. So the only class that has a decrease here from scoring, being proficient at a 3 or 4 is from 4th grade to 5th grade, and they're down 9 students. If I'm sorry, I'm 11 students, 9 students.
Go back to the ELA. Can you go back a slide?
Oh, you know, I'm focusing on that.
I need to do that.
There we go. We're good.
Why is it not going
So
to
it's
work?
similar. Like from 3rd grade to 4th grade, it went up 1. 4th to 5th went down 1 student. 5th to 6th down 12. Down to 13, but then up 12.
I would assume, I mean, I thought we were going for I thought Dennis said
90%.
Yeah, but this is 1 year, right? And that was the whole thing, is it really takes 5 years for you to see a trend, right? Because you have your baseline, you start making some improvements, and then that's when you would expect to see growth.
That's actually a really good question to see in the last 10 years, if we're trending up or trending down.
We can't really look at the last 10 years because of so much
Well, you
change
can't.
that has happened.
Right.
So how about the last 20? You wanna look? at the
No,
last 20?
I'm saying
You don't
you
have to
can't,
sort
you need to look at only the last 2 years, and you need to start building out from here.
The test format changed in a number of different.
I don't wanna go back anymore, I wanna start from now.
Scale.
This really needs to be your baseline.
Yeah, and that really, I mean, I know you always want to see historicals. I actually did it for my own personal gratification, and honestly, they're very flat. And they're not, I mean, I think maybe when I went back to 2013, 2014, the highest scores I saw in ELA were in the 70s. So they are pretty flat. I don't, to our credit, if you will, I will say that comparably speaking, I don't think we fell as much with COVID as a lot of other districts did.
I
There
have
are
a-
places that fell off the cliff.
Question to last year, what were the grades that had to do computer-based testing? And
We did, 6th grade.
so 6th grade, that's where we saw a drop, and where else?
And we did 5th grade.
And 5th grade, and that's where we saw a drop. So there were so many changes. That was also 22, 23 was the first year for next gen standards where we, speaking from being a middle school teacher, we didn't know what was expected on the test. And when my students were taking it and I was standing in the back of the room, it was different than what it was before. So to me, I actually think that given computer-based testing, given that these students had some COVID learning loss, and given that we just started new standards where we didn't have any tests to see what it was going to look like, to me, I'm actually pretty impressed.
I'm not impressed.
It's okay not to be impressed, but what we have to say
There's always
is
room for growth.
across the board in all the testing, because like we talked about this before, we're not showing the regions tonight, but at some point we need to look at that as well. This has to become the baseline from which you move forward. It'll be really interesting to see if having a new ELA program makes a difference, right?
Yes.
And can we make sure we track certain footnotes, like so next year, make sure we put a footnote, start a new ELA.
I
You know what I
have,
mean? So we
yeah, and I have, it's funny that you brought that up, because I did think of that, the middle school changed math programs a while back, and I'd like to go back and asterize it. I did it when I went back over the years, I did say, here's where we started teachers' college work, to see if we were increasing or not.
Yeah.
Very marginally.
And we can do the same for math for last year. That we added in.
Last
Erie
year,
Square.
the years before that, sure, yeah.
Like we added a new one last year for math. Yeah, that's a good idea, Jen.
Yeah, just like drill it down.
Yeah.
We can look
And
at
then no one has
AP
to
exams
look
too
back.
and
What
get
was the
really.
other year?
Oh, yes, no.
So that's a good
Yeah.
point, Erica, that,
Yeah.
again, remember, when we want to look at continuous school improvement, student performance and outcomes is the end goal. But to make the decisions to impact that, you take student achievement data as one of those metrics.
Right. Yeah, I think that was, and I know that you didn't have the follow-up with Brad,
We need
but
to do that.
that was something that he, I think, hammered home all day long, that if all you're looking is at test scores, you are missing 3/4 of the picture. And then you can only fix something in a certain way, instead of looking at all of the data together and saying, what do we have here?
Right.
And it might behoove us to have Brad come virtually right before or right after. The more detailed presentation.
And it would also, it's gonna help us tell our story and where we wanna go.
Exactly.
And I think it will actually help us get more. If we focus more on the education of our students, the community will focus more on the education of our students, right? So yeah, just keep on doing that.
Again, going back to the post-decision world, we also need to remember the financial forecast. So thanks to Enrique for putting together this projected data based upon our best knowledge at this time. Again, this is projected data. Enrique's done a fantastic job of looking forward to say that we anticipate over the next few years, you can see here from 23 to 24 to 30 to 31, we need to prepare for increases in our budget. Tax levy increases between the amounts shown there. At the same time, we will anticipate a cessation fund decrease over those years as well.
We're gonna get a little bit more specific and dive more into this in our work session in December. Where we'll kind of explain the history of the district and our financials and the loss of our, $25 million of revenue. And notice that we don't really have a spending problem, that we truly have a revenue problem. So we'll explore that further. I know that we've been talking about this for years. We've been talking about,
We'll go into our zero-based budgeting.
we just want to make sure that the district knows that exactly what we're trying to do to help while maintaining a good program for our students. So we'll dive a bit more into that in December.
Yes, and that includes, as we compare ourselves regionally in terms of achievement scores, what does tax growth in other municipalities looks like? What does tax growth in other school districts look like as well too?
Okay.
That is our presentation.
So how do we wanna leave this evening? I know next week we're supposed to be making decisions. Does anybody have anything else they wanna add to this conversation around the structure?
So wait, I don't know how we can vote on 3 options. With 7 people.
We're voting on a policy,
So A is, you're saying how do we actually procedurally handle it? We
Right.
are A.
We
right?
are,
So there's no policy that has to be written. We have to have the policy for B, which is already written. And then we have to have a policy written for G. If we leave here tonight saying that those are all options that we're voting on. And then we have to vote on B.
so are we voting on? We're gonna vote on A, we're gonna go vote on B, and we're gonna vote on G and take the highest of them, or you get one vote? Like, what are we expecting? Does everyone
It's
get
a
one?
majority. So
Wow.
majority.
Split by three.
So you're not voting on A, because A is what we are. Right?
So is the question, do we vote to change yes or no? And if it's yes, then we vote on what the
Between the
changes
two.
are? So is it
So it's
a
a double
two-stage vote? Vote one would be, are we changing? And then vote two would be
Well,
B or G? I'm asking.
No,
I don't know.
is somebody
Yeah, but
voting
I
on
think
those
it's no.
policies?
Well, I wanna make sure that we spell it out, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're voting only on one, it will be hard, like, can we move forward if we don't have a quorum?
No. You
Right.
need a majority vote on one of the
We have to
policies.
have, yes, yes.
So
So
how
it
does
shouldn't pass three.
then we can't have three.
Tamika has a question.
Yes.
When are we getting calls? When are we getting calls?
So we shared our best thinking in the document we passed out, and the reason why it's passed out is because of our staffing identification here. This was the best, we tried to identify if there was any quantifiable cost. We tried to assign that number. The other cost categories can be spoken to in terms of anticipated increase or decrease away from the current plan, if that makes sense. So, for example, if there is a plan that, if we choose plan G, where we feel that we will have less bus runs, we could anticipate a decrease in transportation costs, not knowing what that would look like as a quantifiable measure.
So these are just estimated numbers?
Well, where we could identify staff that could be explored to reduce, or that would be explored to increase based upon need. We tried to quantify the numbers as close to possible of what that would be.
And some of this is based on attrition, right? Okay, I just wanna make sure.
Yes.
This is not like just, yeah, some of it is based on attrition.
But we also have Armand's input, his input that has to be done for these too, right? Like the conversation about adding on to the building if we needed to, and what those costs look like.
But we don't need that for,
Well, I would think, if we move to a model and there's an increase of kids, what that cost looks like for each model.
Do we have that in
Because
BCS?
If
No.
it's $2 billion to add on 2 classrooms to a building, I think the taxpayers would want to know that. I would
Honestly,
want to
each
know that
plan,
before I voted.
each plan, even if it's potential costs, each plan needs, so the district, so the people at home can see it, it needs to say, Plan A, we have to redo, put gang bathrooms in, we would be moving, switching the buildings, this is the cost to stay in Plan A. Plan B, this is the cost, even if it's potential, we just had a guy come up.
But
that now.
So,
But yeah, I
This
think
is my
though
question.
I think we have that though for, when we are in our facilities meeting, there's money set aside that no matter which one we pick, it's just how we're gonna allocate that same money what we're gonna do with it.
Yeah, but we.
that's not true. Because there's costs associated that you wouldn't need to do with the bond that go with, listen, and to be transparent. You just had a guy come up here and say, where's the cost? Show me.
So for,
Because
I guess we could
negligible.
say an example would be, if we stay in at Plan A and we don't move 4 or 5 to Frank G, we need to invest money here in gang bathrooms. No. That has to happen.
Yes.
Because there's not enough gang bathrooms
And we
in this
also,
building. That's a cost,
and you would have to, I would say, fix this cafeteria.
but that's probably in any use of this building. Why?
Yes, you're
any
right,
use.
so
That-
you're right,
that's
in
the
your
neutral.
train of thinking, you're right, it would just be the gang bathrooms. Is there any other cost associated with staying here
a facilities point.
I think you would still have to do something about that space that's not being utilized.
Yeah, so that there is neutral, because we'd still have to repurpose, we'd have to refit out that swim to be
Anyway,
better.
I agree with that. That was planned, and that's planned for anyone in the BTS. Okay, so, busing costs more in Plan A, right? We know that.
Busing costs more, how much more, I don't know if we could
I'd like to see the cost.
quantify. Busing costs more.
So we did kind of vet that last year. You did it last year. I'm gonna find it. It's in
Okay.
Board Docs.
It was like 150,000. I think that was kind of what it was.
Okay, so then we got
A, then
9
B.
bathrooms, we have busing.
over B.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more for A and B.
Do we save any positions?
Yeah, so like, but everything is so negligible.
It's negligible.
Okay, I get that it's negligible and I'm looking at this and that's great that I'm looking at this, but it needs to be put up.
I was just so, I was so upset that we made decisions based around just money. And I know that we're not doing that, but then we became obsessive over those dollars and cents. And it's really hard, no matter what model we're in, to predict some of these changes. So, you know, massive things like transportation, I understand. Or massive things like putting an entire addition on a building, I understand. But we're talking about like, maybe you can reduce a teacher or two. Maybe you're gonna need that teacher or two.
Maybe someone's gonna retire and
Maybe
you
we
put someone
don't
else
need
there.
monitors anymore. We can save $13,000. Like, we're talking about.
Modules is a cost.
We don't need them right.
Okay, so I get that, but listen, I understand what you're saying, but if I'm a taxpayer at home and you just showed me, next year it's 2.75, then the year after that it's 4.6,
The thing.
the year after that it's 6.5.
Steph, we're gonna build a budget and they're gonna see if we went haywire with spending and then they're gonna vote our budget down. We have to be fiscally responsible.
We can't vote on something if we don't have total dollar amounts that are presented to
Why
the
not?
district. I mean, we're bringing the community.
We said we were gonna save 2 million last time.
Can I just finish my thought
Yeah.
for 1 second? We did the World Cafe, everybody got to come in, they got to ask us all these questions. We got an opportunity to explain everything that we needed to the community members. But now we're saying, now that we have to vote, we're not gonna present you with what these dollars will impact your pocket. We're just gonna make these assumptions, because right now we're sitting here, Armand left today, and I had a lot of questions that he could not answer. One being, if BP gets changed to an administration building, what impact with the classrooms does that have to do? Like, what changes need to be made for that?
None.
There's
None.
there's
That has to
none
be-
for IT, for the tech department, but the other people that would eventually move there.
That's
will
their
get impact.
responsibility.
Okay, but
It's
again,
not part of the decision maker.
it's not for you, it is for me. I would like to have all of the information in front of me, so when I say yes to something, I can say, I went through everything across the board and I have been given all of the information and I gave it to the community and it was presented and this is why I voted how I voted. For you to, it can't be just, we're looking at this sheet and it's still, there's still all this information that's still missing.
I get what they're saying about facilities, and there's some things that we have to do regardless. The cost of them moving, like, technology isn't gonna be any cost. But the cost of, sorry, the cost of repurposing classrooms for offices, that would kind of be a wash if you actually had to buy something. I do think that what costs that we can associate it, not hypothetically, 10 years from now, any cost you can associate with each plan. And we said that no matter what, even if you stay in Plan A, you're moving. We're moving buildings. Okay, we know that. So I just think the cost, even if it's negligible, nothing, you know what I mean? Like, this is 50,000, this is 60,000.
But I
just
guess,
think it should
like,
be
Steph, I guess we need,
board that there was a member here, a community member here.
we need
that's
to give pluses
taxpayer,
and minuses.
that came with questions and we could not answer it as a board.
Okay, can we just give the pluses?
answers.
Yeah, we should try to have most of that because.
We
have
only
to
did
do
like-
some-
We did this for plan, I can't find it on Board Docs. We did this last.
Okay, so plan A,
So
I'm
plan
just
A.
looking through the chart that you gave me.
But we don't have
Just
transportation.
like gang
We're
bathrooms.
just gonna write it's a plus or it's a minus.
Is it just
I
a
don't
plus
know.
or a minus?
Right, we're not gonna put, we're just gonna write plus or minus, not
Okay,
saying
plus
it's
for me.
300,000 or a million, like I think it could be.
Okay, okay, a plus and a minus works for me.
Okay, so we stayed with the current plan A. We still need a place for IT, so we have to buy or rent space for IT.
That would be an additional.
That's a
extra.
plus
So an
space.
expensive, so
Right.
if that, so I can give you a dollar amount. I think we had discussed that if we rented a space, it was gonna be about $4,000 a month. And the space had to be renovated, give or take. That's why putting an exact dollar amount is not good.
Okay,
But it was somewhere between $3,500 and $4,000 a month for the rental, and we were gonna have to outfit the space.
okay, so that would be.
That's a
an-
large expense.
That would be an
I
additional
would
plus.
like the administration to give me those numbers in writing from them.
Okay,
We're
but we
sitting
should go
here just
through it.
making up numbers at the table now.
We're not making them up,
We're
Tamika.
not, I'm sorry, we're not.
Okay, you know what, guys,
We're throwing out estimates now of
hold
just
on,
random.
let's just forget this. We're not gonna do this right now. It's 11 o'clock at night. We're all tired. We've all had long days. If this is what Tamika needs to make a decision, one way or the other, we have to find a way to get it to her. It might not, we all kind of know because we did this last year and it's in board docs and we talked about it for freaking hours. We did,
We took Plan C off the table for a bunch of reasons, and one of them being that you had to put money
More
and
money.
resources to it. But no one ever gave me those dollars.
We just know it.
We just know it. So before we make the administration go through costing out 3 models, we need to seriously express what direction we wanna go in
That's
here.
why I'm.
It's not fair
I
to
agree.
the people that work here
I mean,
to sit and cost out 3 models. It's just, it's a lot.
I agree,
It's
but I
not
think, I don't know.
So that we just make a motion to take one off now and say, okay, so let's get rid of one. So I
Well,
would
I
say,
think what we need
hey,
to
we're not
discuss
gonna have
what
plan A
we're all
anymore. Who
feeling.
wants to vote on it? Now you only have to do it for 2. If there's 4 people that say go.
I mean, if that's
Take
the
that
stance
away.
that we want to take, or we're not working collaboratively, that's fine.
No, that's
It's not about
But
that.
that's what's happening right now, because I just said to you, I don't have the information, I would like the information. He was not a part of the conversation last year at all, but somehow everyone here knows what the cost is for that.
We don't, we have.
We
to-
don't, that's
we
exactly my point, we do not have the cost. I would like to get that information, I would like it to be shared with the community, and I would like us to all get on the same page. And when that happens, and we can share it out with the community, we are free to discuss taking whatever we want to take off the thing and voting. But we cannot, as a community, as a board, on the stage, sit here and say, we have the cost, we don't have the cost, we don't know, we know, some don't, and then, but we're voting. It's not right to do that. We have done a lot of work in involving the community, and what's happening right now is taking all of that work and throwing it away. That's how I feel about it.
This plan should stay.
Well, could, to help give as specific costs as possible for each plan, there are some decisions that we would have to assume that the board would want to make every decision associated with that cost. Does that make sense? So for instance, are we willing to build out a classroom space if there is a need for a space? Does that make sense?
In the long term, for long-term plans?
Or we would want to reduce staff members. Right, I mean, I guess I'm trying to, I want to be able to provide the information so the board can make the decision. But there are some decisions that need to be made in each plan that have costs associated with them. And we would want to know which decisions the board would want to go in that direction.
Okay.
Or would the board like us to consider all possible things that need to be done and quantify that?
I get not having to quantify everything because you're hypothetically trying to predict the future.
Yeah.
So I get that. That's kind of crazy. You can't, you could make as many plans as you want, but you know, that I just think for me personally, and for some people that are new to the game, they weren't here last year. Just to kind of what you were doing, Jen, like this is a plus, this is a minus, and say that it's basically
So let's start, we can start with what we started with here. So last year, the meeting, or meeting with this, I apologize, this is a good baseline for us to start. From the March 22nd, 2023 meeting. There's a elementary reconfiguration discussion here, which has the current Model A, the net savings, but it includes reduction of classroom sections, 4, which we ended up bringing back 3 of them.
That's why you can't.
That's why you can't do this. 2 buses at 3.5, interest amortization over 72 years, its cost was $52,000.
Divided by 4.
Yeah, so 14,000 mileage, with $10,000 repair was 13,002. Extra 2 drivers was $70,000. And then we added this was not reflected because we added a music teacher. So the net savings is nothing. It's 100 and something.
I do remember.
Okay. Now you're saying Plan A is going to have an expense to take out the technology department and potentially add a game bathroom here. So that's the 2 pluses, right, Lisa? Okay.
Yes, well, that's based on, once we get the new numbers for the students and how the classrooms are gonna fill out, we're swapping FGL and Furnace Woods, because we don't have that. We're using the current model right now, which is not correct.
This doesn't change that. What I just shared with you, the negligible 100, yes, the game bathrooms, yes. But other than that, no. So what I'm saying to you is, other than the bigger expenses, right, the bigger one, we have these smaller expense out for the community. It's been presented, right?
Well, that
The
one, yes.
bigger hypothetical stuff, that's a different conversation, but this exists. Plan B last year, which was 2 pre-K2 buildings, and yes, it has changed slightly, had a net cost of $244,000, but we were adding the music teacher, which we added it anyway, so the net cost was $110,000. 130, right?
To where we are today.
To where we are today.
Okay.
Okay, so now what other costs do you have in that, the ones, I don't know what other costs are other than moving? What are the other costs?
And Plan A has moving too.
Yeah, Plan B, what are the?
Each plan has moving, so that doesn't matter.
So Plan B, what other costs are we concerned about?
Plan B was A and B both have space for IT, right?
Yes.
Yes, so that's, we have to find out that cost.
You can say. I'm sorry.
In any of these plans, we have to rework the back room with her.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, no matter what.
I mean, you can have lots of savings in potentially in G.
G has the most potential for savings.
Well, that's what I needed to hear.
It's here, it's sitting in front of you.
See, this chart really,
Potential savings.
okay, so seeing this chart, it wasn't very clear to me.
It's not that clear because it's potential.
I don't think the board has any interest in, well, I shouldn't say that, never mind, I take that back, but. Because with any change,
It's
I don't,
potential.
yeah,
If
potential
if
savings.
we say that we're gonna,
I'm looking at almost $700,000,
if not more,
right, between this.
and then take away the one time.
These are all decisions that.
Right.
Which we're not making right now.
And the savings on here are all potential, not
Yeah.
necessarily what we are.
That's why it's kind of like, oh, we have to be okay with.
Yeah, that
that.
we're still gonna go through those pieces, okay.
Yeah, that's why putting it out there that G is gonna save us $1 million, is not responsible. Okay?
I understand that.
It's not
because
responsible.
That's what Princeton
It's
plans.
not responsible to do. I'm
I
not
get that,
personally
but it gives
comfortable
us an opportunity to save on, to reduce teachers over time because. Attrition. It looks like we could reduce teachers' aides, because TAs, because we don't have the first grade. Yeah, extra TAs that we currently have. Not saying that we're gonna jump and do that, but it gives us the opportunity to do Okay.
Uh,
that.
The custodian, we don't need as many at BV. We have 2 positions open right now. We don't have to refill them.
Okay,
Well,
I'm sorry to interrupt. The problem with the custodians, I spoke
Bus
with
drivers.
these, is that you don't need them as custodians, but you need them as
Right, so
drivers.
we have to figure that out.
That's what I'm saying, that's why we didn't include that here.
okay, so
It's on ours.
Jen, when you do this is something that I would ask at home, and I think people are thinking this.
Yeah.
Because we don't know if we need modulars.
right? But let's say the potential savings here is would basically cancel out if we did need money.
Yeah, I don't,
Over time.
over time, I don't think it's not gonna cancel out if we put a new addition on, there's gonna be a one-time cost or not a one-time because we're paying for it over time, but there would be a cost if we put a new square footage on for instance, that we would pay over time. Agreed, because that's gonna be more than modular. New square footage would be more than modular. Right. And so that decision, if we needed it, would have to be made when it was needed. There would be two options. Do we do modulars or do we do capital project to new square footage? And maybe. I'm sorry,
No, I'm following you. I say like I thought.
And I don't know if we would make that decision. We may choose to do modulars first and decide if our head count keeps going up, that it made sense then to do modulars or to do a full build out, or maybe at that point, we start thinking about a conversation about a plan E, right? If we would move fifth grade to Blue Mountain, because then you wouldn't need to do new square footage at Furnace Woods, it would just be a shift.
Okay.
So I think those are conversations that we could have later on if it becomes necessary, but I think there are reasonable solutions.
Thinking outside the box.
Thinking outside the box.
Okay, so the way you've explained it right now, if I'm new to the game and I'm just tuning in, that helps me.
Okay.
That's all I really
Visually help it. That's why I went back to this. Because we did,
So can you tell the people who are watching at home for 35, what
March
the next
22nd, 2023, the savings and the costs are broken down by plan A, B, and C, I believe, community schools are also on there.
But the numbers are not absolutely correct.
No, because you can't ever be,
You have to call them potentials.
and their potentials, and I will just call out for the few people watching that we had said that, that A was gonna have a net savings of $244,000, but we ended up hiring 4 staff members. So it's very hard to gauge all of these things. We ended up, there was.
Yeah,
no
but I mean,
specific-
that's without choice because
Why can't we have the administration actually give us the actual numbers?
Well, they can, but what I'm saying to you, this work was done already and it's wrong.
But it's wrong,
But it's, why is it wrong? Because you can't really.
It's not accurate.
But
Well,
it's
it's-
always,
I would like
The problem is it's not a static conversation, it's a fluid conversation, so it's only as good as the day you looked at it, and then you have to continually adapt for the new information that's in front of you as the needs, wants, and interests continue to
I
change.
understand that, and I would like the most current information prior to me voting, so I have it in front of me. That's what I'm asking for. I'm not asking for March information. I'm asking for the most current information right at this moment, as I sit at this table, what the administration can give to me. That's what I'm asking for.
And I hear that, but I also respect the fact that putting that online with potential, like we have that March one online, and people trying to compare it, puts us in the same situation where people were told they were gonna save $2 to $3 million.
But we don't have to put a full dollar. We can say this is what it is right now, understanding that there could be changes to it, but at least they have a starting point of something to reference. We had someone here today that has no information on what it costs. We were handed this paper as I sat at this table. I don't think that that's right. I think that we should be giving the information that we have.
Some of the information, right, if what you can, and put that it's flexible and.
Yeah, and you don't have to break it out for what it represents, but you can put a number that shows what it is so that people have something to reference. To just say, let's go back to March's thing and, you know, this paper is now what it is for G. I think that's just irresponsible.
Well, I think what Erica was trying to do with show in March is that even though we costed it all out, it's wrong.
And it was, well, what I was trying to point out is that.
Only because things change.
But amongst the 3 plans that we were reviewing last year, we did not talk about anything other than just FTEs really, and busing. At the end of the day, that stuff is really, really negligible. Not, at the end of the day, those things are negligible. So
We can ask the administration to quantify the larger items. We have to identify this. I believe, like, we have to help them out here a little bit.
So
Right.
to that end, are there categories of costs that you would like us to explore over lunch?
I think that I would only want to see what would be just true for that plan. Anything that would be in every plan or that we have to do anyway, why put that in there? We're doing it anyway.
Unique.
Yes.
Well, as an example, I appreciate that, and I wonder,
Facilities.
probably one of the biggest costs would be moving costs, which will be in every plan.
Yes.
But
Every
we
plan.
probably would want to see that.
Yeah, I think we need an idea. I think that's fair. We were told the last time it only cost $38,000. There's no way that costs $38,000.
We are being conservative because we want to make sure that the move is done in a manner that respects the teachers and our custodial staff and
course.
support staff as professionals. And we want to make sure that we do it in a manner that treats that. So we are conservatively saying the moving expenses for every plan with an outside mover would be $200,000.
That includes the pricing for the overtime.
That includes the outside mover, the supplies, paying our local staff,
Okay,
packing that they choose to do.
that they choose to do.
That's a conservative number as well.
Okay, that's good, because we were told $38,000 and that didn't include any of that money. That was what overstaffed overtime.
But
He
you
said
know
that
what?
it-
It's nice that figures out, but that's not unique to any plan.
It's not, but
So I don't think that's a way for the public to compare. I think only what is unique and not looking to the future, only what is unique to the plan.
Do you want to see the potential cost saving and the potential cut in each plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
I honestly, I just think that, and
with that moving
honestly,
expense,
do you want to know what? You can't get too elaborate because then you lose people in all this paperwork. I really think it needs to be pretty simplified with what's unique to the plan, so people could see it at home, not trying to think of the future, and for it to be basic in what we know right now.
so our direction is items unique to the plan.
Yeah, okay. I think most of them are gonna be driven by facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Facilities and staff.
because I think transportation is a big potential, but I don't think it's gonna be a lot either way, because I don't think we have enough information.
Last year, we said 10 to 20%, or 10 to 15%, so that was the number we were given by the administration. So
I don't know.
Can't we compare the years prior for transportation to what last year's was?
we did that.
Last year was 100% more than the year before.
If we can just add the transportation piece into that, that would be great.
Oh, I don't know how you.
I don't
know how you do that.
That's very difficult, Tamika, because that includes making routes, and I don't think we can expect them to do that. So,
Okay, so we don't have routes yet.
We don't have routes yet, just like when we went into Prince Plan, we didn't have routes yet.
yeah,
And it was what it was, and we're still doing it, and we still have issues. Just like every year, when you have community schools, you have issues with routes, but that's not the point. Again, I wasn't on the board, I've been on the board for 2 years, not a year and months, okay? You have to use, we as board members must use board docs as a reference. I know that at one meeting, a couple of years ago, there was a presentation on costs around Princeton Plan that was given to the board at the time and the community at the time. I have gone back and looked at that. I know that we analyzed busing soup to nuts last year. How many straws we were creating by plastic? It is in board docs, right? So like, I think we have to use this as a tool to go and do some of our own research.
I am happy to do the research that I want, but G was not on the table, so therefore I have nothing to reference in G. That's why I'm asking for a
You're
clear
not gonna get.
budget items of what the cost differences are for the 3 remaining plans.
And then maybe Jay's. For transportation, yes. No, yeah. Amelia has a question.
So, sorry, I just wanted to clarify when the question that Jen asked before. So if we leave here today with our 3 plans.
Yeah. I don't know. I have to go follow later.
Okay,
Because I really don't know.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, that maybe we're gonna have 2 policies that day, right, for
And technically,
B and G.
because we're not reading, so B we've read before,
Right.
but it's the same policy, Carmen, we're just
Not for
writing
G,
it 2 different
right?
ways.
No, G is not the same.
G's not the same
No,
policy.
but it's all our attendance policy, it is the same policy.
We just have to revise.
So we'll have it written in 2 different ways, and then you're.
That's what I'm saying,
voting
you
on
bring
which
it,
one.
right, I think that's how we'll do that. Two.
Right. But I mean, is there any, can we get any direction from the board on what people are thinking? I mean, based on all of the pros and cons that we just spent time doing, do we see any themes here? I see a theme that you want less transitions, but I also see a theme that we really value kids together. Like, I need a little, can we get a little direction, a little, anything?
Two plans there. But they're torn between.
I mean, I think you're right. I think we value having our kids together. We see a value to reducing the number of transitions and utilizing, and we've all agreed that we value pre-K and being able to offer it to all of our kids. I mean, that was like one of our first initial questions from them, and we all, I think, unanimously agreed that we valued pre-K as for our district.
If we all give 2 plans, does that help? I don't know, right? And to decide if we're still split or is there a clear theme?
I would love to walk away from this with a little more direction, because Eric and I then have to go and do our work.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
asking.
we
If we
don't-
all give 2 and no one picks 1, does that get us in a place to start? Like, I'm happy to go first if that's a decision. I don't know. I'm not trying to eliminate a plan. That's not the intent. But if you're looking to find out if there's a way to narrow a field, the only way to do that is to discuss,
Narrow the field, and A is not truly represented on any of our sharing. Right, because we're talking about moving first words in FGL.
But we can vote for A and then.
But how
in
can we
3
vote without the
wait,
information? I can't even see the capacity of the building.
We're not voting on it.
May I just have one quick moment to finish that thought? So I think what I was trying to share was, if we were to vote Plan A in to remain, then what would ultimately happen in some number of months, there can be a separate conversation if the building is going to flip flop and what that may look like if you'd like more. I think at the end of the day, your decision on A is not on a facility. Your decision on A is, do you want to make kids go to 3 different buildings over the course of 6 years, assuming no pre-K, because you think that the risk of having to have a population increase is so great that you wouldn't want to have to consider portables in G, or because you don't think that having 2 K-2 community hybrid type schools is something that is appealing to you as a board member making decisions on behalf of the district. So choosing A is not choosing the buildings yet. I think look, we could vote G, and I think Mike could still say, you know what, I'm putting 3, 4, 5 in Furnace Woods, even though we voted G.
So my personal,
I think-
as a trustee, when we rewrite the policy, I would like to write it specifically.
Are we allowed?
We are allowed.
Oh, I thought we weren't. Excellent.
Yeah, so the policy as it stands for Plan A, the previous board that did that, they assigned 2 years per building. It didn't say which years are in the buildings, and that's up to the discretion of the superintendent. But whatever we do, however we want to write it as a board, we can.
And we can do both. No, we could choose a structure and then choose buildings.
Yeah, you can.
You don't even have to do it at that moment.
Well,
You could choose G and then later choose to name the buildings or not.
Yeah, but you might as well do it in policy.
Right, it's the plan.
But my point is, if we're going,
If it
if we
gets us
stay with
to-
A and we're not there yet,
Yeah,
right, we can still make that as a forward conversation
I
that
agree.
allows us to still root out all of those concerns so that we don't have them, we're just doing it willy-nilly.
Yeah, I mean, I think plan A is kind of the only plan that we.
Right, but we can do that, I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I want to make sure that if we have this conversation, the idea that we're doing this whole, that opportunity to discuss is not an accurate assessment. It's more of an idea that this would be a preference that we need to further explore, not that if we stay A, it's definitely flipping and we're deciding on ourselves. Right?
I agree.
And I
I
think
guess-
that brings people closer to peace with a decision and an opportunity to discuss in greater detail.
Mike, what do you want? I think that's, right, I don't, right, what do you want from us?
Thank
At
you.
this- Yeah. You need us,
So as an example, I want the board to have all the information they want to make an informed decision, so that they feel that they've met their responsibilities of their position and also for to the students. As an example, we asked, we took a dive into what travel times would be between buildings, given plans. And when we went to do that, to identify what those travel times would be across more plans was more difficult. So the more narrow you can get in terms of plans, that would be helpful to get more data for you. As you saw, as we narrowed down plans, we were able to get you in a quicker time frame, more and more information.
The narrower we go, the deeper you can go.
So in all honesty, an A as it is presented to the district right now, you already have that information with the bus times. So you would really only be working on the simulations for B and G. So it's 2 plans, correct? Okay.
We did an estimate, we did the estimate for B last year.
Okay, so then we're
That
just
is-
working
that
on
should
the
exist.
transportation piece of 1. So my question again here is if I don't even know what the capacity is if you switch furnace woods and FGL, because we don't have that. I'm asking for that information so that I can review it,
That's fine.
because it's something I learned of today.
But don't worry too much right this moment, because we're not deciding that right now.
I understand that, but we're also asking for inputs on the plans, and I don't have all the information on the plans to give the input that I need to give. That's just my.
Because we're not voting on that plan, we're voting on B, that's the whole
I
thing.
understand that, right, I still would like to see if there's gonna be 1 classroom left, 2 classrooms left, 3 classrooms
There
left.
would be more.
I would like to see it the same way we did it for the other ones.
That should not be hard for the education to do.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry.
We have to do, we have to take Plan A and swap Frank G. Lindsay and Furnace Wood.
Well, quick question. I sat here all night listening to this, and I would really like to ask you guys, and don't answer me if you don't feel comfortable or you don't want to. But is anybody really in favor of A over G? Because I'm not.
no,
No,
No. I wanted to put that out there,
We don't have all the information though.
but we're not all making decisions in the same way, so that's okay for you, but for
Okay,
me-
that's fine, that's
Yeah.
fine.
But for me, I have enough cons for A and enough pros with other plans. I wanna say to my fellow trustees and to the community that I acknowledge, right, that A is not working. It's not. I've been here for a year doing this, so I am saying tonight that I will never support Plan A. I wanted to share that with you guys. Okay. Anyone have anything else? No? Anything else for the meeting? No, and. So I can close? That's not. All right, have a motion to close? Motion. Have a second?
And